What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 695. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, did you say you're making a ramp for the Jules dog?
No, so the way her dog door works is it's that we had a company come out and drill a hole in the side of the house, basically. Mm-hmm. But just based on the way our backyard is and the living room is, there's like about, 6 inches or so of a gap between the floor and the start of the dog door on the outside. And Jules is not a very big dog, so we have a little ramp there. We have one there. It's like a thick rubber, like it doesn't move. But in the summer, it gets too hot.
For her paws.
The ramp heats up. So we got a welcome mat from Ace and are using that to cover the ramp.
Very nice. Yeah, Jules comes first over there. No doubt about it. But she's a great pup. So today, Luis, we've got our March of the Machine set review, Rare and Mythic Rare. So we're going to go over every single Rare and Mythic Rare in the set. And also there's a bonus sheet that contains extra cards that we're going to be going over here as well. In fact, some of those are technically uncommon, but they appear in one slot per booster pack. So effectively like a rare. And we're going to go over all of those as well. Super excited. These are some of our favorite shows to dive into what they came up with these wild rares where they get a lot more leeway as far as design goes. First up, we want to thank our supporters on Patreon. It's patreon.com/limited resources. They are floating the ship here as we're searching around for potential sponsorship opportunities. We really did want to say thanks to everybody who supports us over there. It means a lot, especially during times like this where we're kind of in flux as far as that goes. Really, really kind of you to support Luis and I and to keep LR going. If you're interested in doing so, it's once again, it's patreon.com/limited resources, and you'll get a thank you card and a limited resources sticker in the mail for signing up at any level, and you get access to some pretty cool stuff. So again, thanks to everybody for supporting us over there. We do appreciate it. Luis, we're going to be using our grading scale here for the rares and mythic rares, the same one that we used on our last show.
Yeah, so there's an A through F grading scale with 2 subgrades. A's are bombs, game winners, just the best cards in the set, and you'll see a lot of them here in the rare show. We're talking cards like Nissa or Miglas. B's are cards that actively pull you towards their color. So these are the cards that you're very happy to play, you're happy to take early, and they pull you toward whatever color or combination of colors they are. We're talking cards like Cinder/Ravager, Rebel, Salvo. C's are playable. These are the Pawns of Limited. They're pretty interchangeable. You're not thrilled or unhappy. They're just cards that go in your deck. Rares typically don't fall into this category all that often. Of course, some will. We're talking cards like Volt Charge or Blight Belly Rat, just, very reasonable cards. These are cards that are sometimes playable, but you really would prefer not to run them. They're just not that good. And kind of mediocre, junky cards, a little too expensive, a little too slow, a little too weak. Cards like Cruel Grimnarch, Sinew Dancer, Kuldotha Cackler. F's are cards that are unplayable in virtually all scenarios, so rares actually get quite a bit more of those than the average. And we're talking cards like Mind Splice Apparatus. So you'll see some rares that are just like, this card costs 10 mana. You're obviously not putting this card in your deck. The 2 subgrades, we have sideboard. So these are cards that rarely, if ever, make the main deck, but can be very powerful out of the sideboard. We're talking cards like Duress or Minor Misstep. And they'll get a grade corresponding to that, but again, they're cards that you typically don't main deck. And then build around. A lot of rares fall into this category. These are cards that by themselves don't do quite enough, but can be very good when you've built around them. When you've put enough of the right cards that work with them, they can be some of the best cards in your entire deck. So we're talking about cards like All Will Be One from Phyrexia, where if you built around it, fantastic card. If you didn't end up doing a whole lot.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, rares and mythic rares tend to be more polarized, right? Like they could be really great, but sometimes they can be really terrible. And oftentimes they will fit into the build-around camp, just like All Will Be One did. So we'll keep our eye out for those, and let us dive in. As we do, we like to rotate through which colors we start with, just to make sure that it's fair to all the colors, because we are human beings and maybe we get tired at the end, or I don't know. We're on black, and our first card up is called Grafted Butcher. This is 1 and a black for a 2/2 Phyrexian Samurai. It's a regular rare. And when it enters the battlefield, Phyrexians you control gain Menace until end of turn. As we noted, by the way, Luis, there's more text here, but there's a lot of Phyrexians in the set. So that's definitely a relevant ability. kind of interesting that it's on a 2-drop, right? Like you almost want to wait and get that one big attack in later. But let's see what else it says. It says other Phyrexians you control get +1/+1. Wow. So this thing's really, especially the turn it comes down, a powerhouse. And you can pay 3 and a black and sacrifice an artifact or creature to return Grafted Butcher from your graveyard to the battlefield at sorcery speed. Dang. So you actually can just run it out on turn 2 and let it do its thing, and they'll kill it at some point, and then you can bring it back and have some massive turn.
Yeah, the Grafted Butcher is excellent. It's a lord for a creature type, which there's a lot of in the set. It's not as many as Phyrexia All-Will-Be-One, of course, but it's a lot. And then in addition, it just keeps coming back if they kill it, and it even has an ETB. So at some point, they kill it, you bring it back, and you get some really good value out of it. Grafted Butcher looks awesome. This looks like an A, honestly. Like, it's good early, it's good late. It's not hard to draft around. Like, I would just say this is an excellent card.
I would too. I just did a quick search to see how many times Phyrexian showed up on the card. This isn't 100, like it counts ones that flip into Phyrexians and stuff. So, but there were 61 cards in the set that have that on it. I would assume that front side of it is probably in the 50 range, but that's a lot. Many cards is going to be the most common creature type. So I like A for Grafted Butcher as well. I just love that you can run it out there, let it do its thing. They're going to kill it at some point, and you can set up for that turn where if you have like 2 or 3 Phyrexians on the battlefield, the turn you bring this back is nasty. I mean, they're huge and they get menace. It's going to be very difficult. The one downside, right, is that the effect only lasts as long as Grafted Butcher is on the battlefield, right? So if they can kill it during combat, you do have to be aware that like your really great attack gets a lot worse if your Grafted Butcher leaves play for any reason. So make sure that you factor that in on, can I take this risk? Because taking away menace and +1/+1 can create, a potential game winning situation into one where your creatures all die and you lose, right? So you do have to be aware of it, but we try not to harp too much on, well, what if it dies? This is just a little more of a timing thing where if you're in combat, counting on your Grafted Butcher to survive, you should make sure that you don't put too many eggs in that basket. Next up is Ayara. Yeah, Ayara, Widow of the Realm. This is 1 black for a 3/3 legendary elf noble at rare. And Ayara looks like she has 2 activated abilities. One of them is tap, sacrifice another creature or artifact. And Ayara, Widow of the Realm, deals X damage to target opponent or battle, and you gain X life, where X is a sacrifice permanent's mana value. Okay. And then you can pay 5 and a Phyrexian red to transform her at sorcery speed into Ayara Furnace Queen, which is a 4/4 legendary Phyrexian elf noble that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, return up to 1 target artifact or creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step.
So this is an interesting flip card because this is one of the first ones where it's not obviously better to flip. Sometimes you'll want to flip because a 4/4 that's bringing something back every turn is very, very good. But in a stalled board, sometimes you might want to just keep the 3/3 ability to just start throwing your creatures at their face, basically.
Right.
And both sides are strong as well. Obviously, the combo kind of is you play her, sack a couple creatures, then flip her and start bringing those creatures back. But regardless of how you want to do it, ayara is just a good card. Works really well in sacrifice decks. It's just a good card overall. This looks like an A- to me. I think both sides are pretty threatening. If your opponent casts this card at any point in the game, whether it's turn 3 or turn 10, you're going to be thinking, okay, how do I get rid of that?
Yes.
It's just not a card that can stay in play.
That's right. And, there's the sequencing works out really well, too, because the flip side, Furnace Queen doesn't trigger until your combat step. So you can come to your turn, untap all your lands, on, say, turn, 6, 7, whatever, sacrifice a creature to get in a big chunk. That creature's in the yard, pay the transform cost, flip it over, get that creature back, jam with a 4/4 and whatever else you got, and their life total's lower. That's going to add up really fast. And that's just the most basic use case for the card, right? So it gets a lot worse over time. As you said, Luis, you do this 2 or 3 times, and now you've got this machine that's bringing cards back. It is worth noting that once you transform it, you can't sacrifice stuff anymore. So make sure your yard's kind of where you want it. 2 to 3 creatures would probably be ideal. I like A- for Ayara as well. Super powerful. And interestingly, the first two cards, A, deal with sacrifice, and B, make me want removal that exiles.
Yep, which there is some good removal that exiles, but it's definitely going to be at a premium here.
Bloated Processor is next. This is 2 and a black for a 3/2 Phyrexian. It's rare. It says sacrifice another Phyrexian. That's the cost. And you get to put a +1/+1 counter on Bloated Processor. And it says when it dies, you incubate X where X is its power. So interesting. It's a free sacrifice, but it has to be a Phyrexian specifically. But man, it's hard to imagine arguing with just 2 and a black 3/2 with that second ability.
I mean, 2 and a black 3/2 that dies into incubate 3 is a card you'd be really happy to put in your deck.
Super
And
happy.
then the fact that you can sack other Phyrexians to save this in combat or from removal or just eventually buff the incubate. I would also give this an A-. This is just a really effective card at pretty much any point in the game.
Yeah, and you can sacrifice other incubated things to it, right? Because they're also Phyrexians.
They're Phyrexian when it flips. So the incubate is not Phyrexian until you flip it, but it does. You do have a lot of extra Phyrexians lying around as a result. Yes.
Yeah. So, what did you want to give it?
I think A-. I mean, your opponent cast this card, you're not really getting out of the exchange well, and it can be a real threat when you have a couple other Phyrexians in play.
Yeah, I was gonna go B+. Like, this seems like a solid 2-for-1 to me, with a bit of upside with sacrifice ability. I mean, I guess you could just sacrifice a bunch of them and really make this thing something, once it gets up to, 6/5 or whatever, it's like extremely threatening. Yeah, I have it right on that border, B+ to A-. But the floor of just being a solid 2-for-1 is already deep into the B range. Next is Invasion of Innistrar. This is our first battle at the rare, and in fact, in this case, mythic rare slot. So this is 2 black for a 5 defense battle with flash. And it says, when Invasion of Innistrad enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets... I love it when they do this. -13 until end of turn. And then the other side of it, so if you can win the battle, it becomes Deluge of the Dead, which is an enchantment. And when Deluge of the Dead enters the battlefield, create 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. And you can pay 2 and a black to exile target card from your graveyard. If it was a creature card, you get a 2/2 black zombie creature token. I also have to note here, Luis, one thing I always check for on this is whether they enter the battlefield tapped or not, and none of them do.
No. So this is going to be one of the easiest battles to defeat because it's got flash, removes a blocker immediately, and then also lets you just line it up exactly the way you want it. So you're like, end of turn, play this, kill your only blocker, immediately attack it.
Yes.
And then as a result, if you're able to do that, you get 2/2 zombies, so you're not going to die on the backswing most likely. And then you can start taking over the game with 3 mana, make a zombie. So fantastic card. I mean, it's 2 black kill target creature with lots of upside.
Yes.
I hate to be a broken record here, but I think this card's an A.
I do too.
I just think it's going to be really good. Like, compare it to 4 mana, make 2/2s, kill a creature.
Yes.
It's not that hard to imagine doing that. That card would be absurd.
That's right. And the play pattern for this works out well. So you lined up that early part of it, but there's the other part where you can actually commit attack to get this thing transformed. And then you have 2/2s sitting there at the minimum, right? You may have mana up to make more of them, meaning that even if you are in a racing situation, your opponent attacks you with a bunch of stuff, you flash this in, kill one of their attackers, and you can afford to attack the battle here and not have to leave everything back, because once you get it transformed, you have a board state to protect your life total already. So it plays beautifully. I like A for Invasion of Innistrad. Next is Pile On. This is 3 and a black for an instant at rare. It has Convoke, and it says destroy target creature or planeswalker and surveil 2.
Solid piece of removal here.
It's just super efficient. It's an instant. It kills anything. You get surveil 2, which is not quite draw a card, but it's, closer to that than it is to not drawing a card. And then Convoke, of course, is excellent. I mean, this is about as premium as removal can get.
Yeah, it's a A- for Pileon.
I agree. For efficiency's sake.
Really solid card.
Yeah, I mean, you could pay 1 or 0 or 2 mana for this effect. That's just insane. Next is Archpriest of Shadows, which is 3 black for a 4/4 human warlock at rare. It's got backup 1, and it has Death Touch, but it has another ability, because remember, backup says it gains the following abilities until end of turn. So it gains anything after that. So it gets Death Touch, and it also gets, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
So
Dang.
the way this plays is you cast Archpriest, and either you give your worst creature the counter, so then you attack with your now 2/2 Death Touch, and they have to block it and trade something for it, or you get a creature back. Or you give a good creature that ability, and then they have to like double block it or trump it. Or you give an evasive creature the ability and immediately spike, and you're left with a 4/4 Death Touch that if it ever hits them, brings a creature back. Black just has all bangers. I mean, this is another A. Like, you just can't. You can't say otherwise.
No, and of course, if you have a flyer, right? If you have an unblockable, if you have something that can just get in that turn regardless, and you can set that up, then you can just do that, get your creature back, and you've got a full board state going. Wow, that's a great card. Next. I guess she's gotten famous enough now just to be a one-name superstar, Shieldra.
Yep, just straight up, Shieldra.
There's nothing else. She's just there. It's her, and she's a 3 black for a 4/5 legendary Phyrexian Praetor. And as you might guess, this is a mythic. She's got Menace, and when she enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. You know they're pushing this, right? If they're like, hey, we're just going to call this card Shieldred, and it's going to cost 5 mana, this is going to be absolutely nuts. And so far it already is. But wait, there's more. You can pay 4 and a black to exile Shieldred, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. So what does Shieldred become upon re-entering the battlefield? The True Scriptures, which is a saga. An enchantment saga, and it says as always, as the saga enters as it enters the battlefield and after your draw step, add a lore counter. Chapter 1 is for each opponent, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So you're getting that straight away. Chapter 2 is each opponent discards 3 cards and then mills 3 cards. And chapter 3 is put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control, exile the True Scriptures, then return it to the battlefield front face up. Are you kidding me? This is just ludicrous.
Let me get this straight. Shieldred is 5 mana for a 4/5 menace that edicts your opponent.
Yes.
So that's the start of things.
Probably a menace 4/5 that edicts is like already into the A range.
And then if they have 8 or more cards in your deck and maybe they're tapped out or you have the time to do it, you pay 5 mana, you flip Shieldred, you immediately kill their best creature. Then you make them discard 3 cards and mill 3 cards. And then you bring all creatures back and you get Shieldred back and you get the ETB of Shieldred. So it's...
And does that sound like a merry-go-round that you want to partake in? I mean, she's back again. Come on.
So, yeah, I mean, Shieldred's an A+. Like,
A+ with
every
ease.
part of this is fantastic.
Unbelievable card. Again, when I saw Shieldred with no other text and Mythic Rare, I'm like, all right, buckle up. Next card is Invasion of Fiora, which, as you might imagine, is a battle. This is a 4 black, 4 defense battle. And it says, when Invasion of Fiora enters the battlefield, choose 1 or both, destroy all legendary creatures and or destroy all non-legendary creatures. So you can't choose to just have it be a wrath. And then it flips into Marchesa Resolute Monarch, which is a legendary human noble that's a 3/6 with menace and death touch. And whenever it attacks, remove all counters from up to 1 target permanent. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you haven't been dealt combat damage since your last turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Boy,
So
they just
this
have no chill with these things, man.
No, so this is mostly a 6-mana Wrath, but of course you get to choose kind of what you want to do past that. And then if you do manage to take it down with 4 defense, it's not impossible to do so. You can go ahead and get a 3/6 that has a bunch of abilities. But what I find interesting about this card is if you ever can rack up a legendary creature, you can play this, kill all non-legendary creatures, and immediately attack it with your legendary creature.
That's a great setup.
And, obviously they can't have a legendary creature for that to work too. And it doesn't seem like it's that impossible to do, but also just 6 mana, kill all creatures, leave behind good value that your opponent still has to worry about it. Look, the thing with all these battles are we don't think they're easy to flip. We don't think it's free. It's very, very much not.
Right.
But with something like Invasion of Fiora, I would play this without the backside.
Yes.
It's a 6 mana kill all creatures card that has even a little bit of flexibility if you happen to have a legend or somehow they have a legend and you don't have a legend.
Right.
And then you get this sub game where if you can ever attack unblocked, you have the chance to get a really good amount of value.
Huge amount.
And then with something like Invasion of Innistrad that has flash and kills a creature, obviously it's very different. That you can pretty easily set up the whole thing.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, this card I think is an A-. It's not a full A just because it's still a 6 mana Wrath and it's not necessarily going to do a ton more than that.
Right.
But the card definitely has a lot of good stuff going for it.
Definitely. And, because I've been thinking about the battles into 2 kind of subgroups, right? One of them is if I commit a full attack to the battle to get it transformed, maybe I have to give up a creature to do it, or at least leave my shields down fully for a turn. What does it return to me when my opponent is looking at the attack on the other side? Right? Do I have a board state of some sort? Does it become a creature that can block? Does it become something that blows up a creature on the other side? Or does it get me non-board value? Like, does it, generate me, some cards or whatever, but the shields are very much down. Those are the 2 kind of groups that you have to think about, because you always have to recognize that in many cases, you're going to have to attack with your best creatures to get them transformed. This one has a play pattern that, as you pointed out, is so different from like we saw Invasion of Innistrad, which is the most obvious play pattern. This one is different. Like if you blow up the whole board, the battle's just sitting there and you have to like reload and eventually be able to attack it unless you set up the thing. And that does make it a bit weaker. But I agree with you. I mean, the power ceiling on this is very high. Wraths are generally quite good. 6 mana Wraths are generally not so good. But this one can become, the creature it becomes, the Marchesa, is insane. That's a nasty, really nasty card, especially if you can get it transformed in any type of time frame, because you'll start generating that card advantage right away. Next is Breach the Multiverse. It's 5 black for a sorcery at rare. This better be good, right? I mean, we've already given away a ton of A's here in black. This is a 7 mana sorcery.
Black's got an unbroken streak, actually. Every card has been an A- or better.
Oh my God, you're right.
And there was even an A+ in Shieldra. And honestly, I think Archpriest of Shadows is pretty close to an A+. Like it does a lot of work. So what does Breach the Multiverse do? Well, it's 5 black, like you said.
Sorcery.
It's a sorcery in rare. And it starts with each player mills 10 cards. So it's like, okay, we got a weird one.
Yeah.
But then for each player, choose a creature or planeswalker in that player's graveyard. So it doesn't have to be among those 10 milled. But of course, milling 10 sweetens the pot. And then put those cards onto the battlefield under your control, and all your creatures become Phyrexians in addition to their types. So
wow.
It's a 7 mana spell, but you're going to get to put the best creature in each graveyard into play under your control, or planeswalker if you're lucky. This is another A. Like, this is the kind of card where if you build a, black-white kind of deck that can stall out, maybe gain some life, and then you just cast this on turn 7, you're going to end up with the 2 best creatures in play. Like, that's really strong.
And out of a huge sample, because it's 10 plus, this is a 7 drop. Let's be conservative and say there's 4 cards in the graveyard. There could easily be 9, but let's say there's 4. You're choosing from 14 cards, right? I mean, you're coming up on a third, or you're a bit over a third of your opponent's library in your library to pick the best card out of each of those. Like, that's great. You're going to find some really good, you're not bricking, right? You're never going to miss on this ever.
It's pretty hard to.
Right. I mean, it would be almost impossible to just outright miss unless somebody built a creatureless deck. But if it's anything normal, you're going to hit something, which of course is kind of the the bottom. But I mean, you're also going to hit good stuff a decent chunk of the time. I do like giving this a build around grade. I mean, you do have to have a deck that's designed to go long, but once you hit 7, you just get such a great board state out of it. One other thing, Luis, that I have to note here is that, like, do you think that each player milling 10 cards could become a strategic, like, if the game's very late, you mill both players out and say, go, you win.
Also, I mean, blue-black does have a bit of the mill them to 8 strategy. So there's a couple other cards that just kind of randomly mill your opponents too.
To get their graveyard up to 8 cards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but imagine if you put this in like a blue-black deck, sometimes you've milled them for 6 cards and then the game kind of goes long. Another 10 cards on top of that is all of a sudden, that's just it.
Right.
So it's got that. I mean, there is the slight drawback of if you're going through your deck more quickly than your opponent, you end up looking at this and be like, oh, am I going to mill myself out? But that's not something I think is going to happen very often.
Agreed. And then there, of course, just will be those games where it's 2 control decks going at it and nobody's really able to get anything going. And this will end the game in your favor. Like, if you're both below 10 cards, then you win. I like build around A for Breach the Multiverse. I do feel like you would put it into any deck that could reasonably cast it, but this is a 7 mana card. Like, you do need to make sure you can get up to 7. And if this format ends up being fast at all, that could be a lot to ask.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this a build around. I would just give it an A. Like, it's a 7 mana card. Inherent in 7 mana cards are what you're describing.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to call those build arounds or not. I mean,
I don't know. I just want to note
close.
that you do, look, this might just not slot in.
The red-black aggro deck is not just going to play this without a little bit of help, especially if you're like, I'm going to play 16 lands or whatever.
Right.
But I think that it's pretty easy to imagine building a deck that just goes a little longer and tries to cast this card because it's a fantastic card if you do cast it.
Agreed. All right. Hoarding Brood Lord. Can you keep the streak alive? It is 5 black. I got to tell you, Luis, it almost doesn't matter what it says after this. Like, that's going to be really tough to give an A to, just a card that costs 8 mana with triple black. But
spoiler, the next word is going to help and it's getting an A.
Okay. It's a dragon. It's a 7/6 with flying. It's a rare and it has Convoke. So they tricked me. The 8 mana is not 8 mana. In fact, it's probably significantly less. So what does it do? When Hoarding Broodlord enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. For as long as that card remains exiled, you may play it, and spells you cast from exile have Convoke. You get to pick the card?
Oh yeah. So you play this, it's Demonic Tutor. You get the best card out of your deck, and that card even gets Convoke. And it's 7/6 flyer that you can tap 2 or 3 creatures to cast at a reasonable cost.
That's incredible. And the card's even exiled, so they can't take it out of your hand. Like, not that really happens in limited that much, but it's like in a safe spot. And it doesn't care what happens to the Hoarding Broodlord either. Like, if it dies immediately, you can still just cast that other card the next turn.
Yep.
This is a regular rare.
Yeah, I mean, this card is great.
Oh my God, black just went end to end?
Yep. Both sides of the court. We're just straight up 10 A level rares right off the bat.
Just coast to coast for black. Wow.
The good thing is,
that's never happened, right?
Shieldra aside, these cards don't seem completely outrageous. So
yeah,
there's a lot of gameplay to them, but it does mean that, there's a lot of people going to open up a black rare and just be like, all right, yeah, I guess this is where I'm going.
Definitely. Also of note is sealed. This type of thing tends to affect sealed, where it's like, oh, you open a black rare, you're good to go. Wow, incredible. So A for Hoarding Broodlord. That's going to bring us to red. Let's see if it can keep up. First red card is called Blood Feather Phoenix. It is 1 and a red for a 2/2 Phoenix at rare. It has flying and it can't block. So you get a 2/2 flyer for 2, which is insane, but it cannot block. So less good. It says whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control, and yes, you do control spells while they're on the stack, deals damage to an opponent or battle, you may pay red. If you do, return Bloodfeather Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste until end of turn.
Yeah, that's
really good.
Solid addition to any red deck. Most of the time that you spend a card to deal damage to your opponent, you're kind of down a card, but this makes it kind of makes it up. It just kind of gives you those cards as an option to you kind of get to use those cards as a way to bring this back, even if you don't care about the damage all that much. But I mean, a 2/2 flyer is exactly what red decks want, even if it can't block. I'll give this a B. I think this is good for an aggressive red deck.
Super solid B for Bloodfeather Phoenix. Next is Invasion of Tarkir. This is 1 and a red for a mythic rare battle. It has 5 defense. And it says, when Invasion of Tarkir enters a battlefield, reveal any number of dragon cards from your hand. When you do, Invasion of Tarkir deals X plus 2 damage to any target where X is the number of cards revealed this way. So that first sentence sucks where you're like, dragons? Like, how many of those am I going to have in limited? But it does 2, right? So we have a sorcery speed, 2 damage minimum. And if you can flip it, and remember, it is 5 defense, so it's quite a bit. It becomes Defiant Thunderma, which is a 4/4 flying, trampling dragon that says whenever a dragon you control attacks, it deals 2 damage to any target. Dang. And it is, I mean, I want to go back to this again, but this battle is 2 mana. So like, you get it down early.
This reminds me a lot of Bone Crusher Giant. You're spending 2 mana early to kill something to deal 2 at sorcery speed. Obviously, if you have a dragon randomly, it's pretty nice, but that's not going to happen too often. But then if you ever can defeat the battle, you get this 4/4 flying trample that deals 2 when it attacks. I mean, that card's great too.
Totally. And you have a long time to plan out how you want to go about this, right? I mean, if you play this on turn 2 and kill their 2-drop, then you can really say, all right, I'm going to play the mini game here and I'm going to try to get this thing transformed because this dragon will take over the game.
Oh, easily. And I think that, again, we haven't seen how it plays out, but if my opponent plays this to kill my 2-drop, I'm just sighing, because in my head, I'm thinking the whole rest of the game, I have to deal with the fact that this isn't playing. I really don't want them to flip it.
Yeah. What grade would you give 1 and a red sorcery deal 2 damage to? Is it any target? I forget, actually.
I think so.
2 damage to any other target.
Yeah, so it can't hit itself.
It can't hit itself. Okay. But yeah, is that a C plus? Does that get into the B range if it's just 2 mana sorcery, 1 in a red, deal 2 damage to any target?
I would say it's like a
right?
Like a C.
C plus, yeah. So you get that, but then you just get this tremendous opportunity for a game-winning bomb if you can dedicate the resources to get this thing transformed. How much does that pump the grade up? Because it is 5. Like, to me, if I'm a red aggressive deck, I have to make a choice, right? Am I going to actually try to dedicate resources to getting this thing transformed at the cost of multiple attack steps plus 5 damage that could have gone to my opponent? Or am I going to say, that was fun, the dragon's going to stay in the egg and I'm just going to keep bashing my opponent here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I thought I had a pretty good chance of hitting this, I would go for it.
I think so too. But how much higher does the grade make it to have the opportunity to do so? Like, is this a B+?
It makes it a decent amount higher. I think it's a B+, yeah.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like,
I'm just trying to think of like how I would feel if they played this on turn 2, and I would feel like they got a pretty significant advantage.
I think so too. I think
is the way I would feel about it.
Okay, B+ for Invasion of Tarkir. And as Louise said, if you do happen to have another dragon, it gets kind of like, that's really good now, 2 mana for 3 damage. Next is Into the Fire. It's 2 and a red for a sorcery at rare. It says choose 1. Into the Fire deals 2 damage to each creature, planeswalker, and battle. And the other is put any number of cards from your hand onto the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1. Wow. So this is a sorcery for 3 that does 2 very different things.
It's basically looking to be pretty flexible. Yeah. Neither side is all that impressive.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not super thrilled about 3 mana in red, deal 2 to everything, and paying 3 mana to recycle, discard your 2 worst cards, draw 3 cards is just fine. This looks more like a constructed card to me than like one that I'm super stoked about in limited. Sideboard. But it's probably worth playing just because it lets you cash it out pretty nicely, and it's a powerful effect in the right game.
Yeah. It's a lot of mana, though. It's 3 mana. Like, Like the turn that you do the put any number of cards onto the bottom of your library thing is kind of your whole turn in most cases. That's a lot. I do have to note here, though, that like this thing hits battles. And we have to remember that we did note in the Commons and Uncommons review about particularly Green-Red's ability to get at battles. And that does remind me for Invasion of Tarkir that like if it is in that deck, then it's even easier to transform. So,
you play your 4/4 and attack it and as a 5/5 or whatever.
Right. So something to keep in mind. I'm with you. Like I would put Into the Fire at sideboard at best because, you can bring it in against small creature deck or something, but I'm not that impressed by it. This is sometimes cards elevate themselves by having two not amazing abilities, but they combine via versatility to be worth it. And this one feels like it's a little short. Like it is not that hard to imagine a scenario where neither ability is really desirable.
Yeah, the only one that's going to be that has the potential to be really good is the deal 2, because sometimes your opponent plays 3 creatures into it. The other one is just like, I'm playing this because I have nothing better to do. How often do you want to spend 3 mana and not go up in cards, not go up in board presence, right?
Right. So almost never.
Yeah.
I think another way to think of these types of cards that have two very disparate abilities is that you would prefer them to be on the same continuum, right? Like these are two totally different things. It's not like you say, well, I either need to use this to blow up creatures or I want to recycle all the cards in my hand. It's like, what? No, those are not the same axes. And I think that hurts this card as well. So I would give Into the Fire, like probably like a sideboard C, something like that. Yeah. It's really not that great. What does Nahiri's Warcrafting do?
It's 1 red for a sorcery at rare. Nahiri's Warcraft deals 5 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle. So it hits anything except players. Look at the top X cards in your library, where X is the excess damage dealt this way. You may exile one of these cards, put the rest on the bottom. You may play the exiled card this turn. So basically, it's 3 mana for a deal 5 at sorcery with double red, which that's good. I mean, you're happy with that. And then when you target something that has less than 5 toughness, you get to exile that many cards and play one this turn. So you can play land off it because it says play, not cast. But it has to be this turn. It's not until the end of your next turn. Yeah. So you're not going to want to play this on turn 3. But in the late game, you hit like a good 3 toughness creature. You get to play one of your top 2 cards. All you have to do is hit something with 4 toughness or less, and you'll get at least 1 card out of it. If you hit something with 5 toughness, it's just straight up deal 5.
Right.
But I mean, hitting something small and then getting a kind of good look at the next couple cards. It's pretty solid 2-for-1, I would say. It
is. I also like that it hits battles specifically because we haven't seen a battle that has more than 5 defense, right?
Yeah, I think there's one with 6, but okay. I think that's like maybe the heaviest one. But most of the battles are not like an insane amount of toughness.
Right. Most of them are 4. Some of them are 5. That means that, if you are looking to flip battles, this does it and maybe even gets you a card.
Yeah, and again, I'd be happy playing this card at 1 red sorcery, deal 5 to any target is fine. So I'd give Nahiri's Warcrafting probably a B+.
B+, that's where I'm at too. It doesn't quite hit A, but I mean, it has the potential for a 2-for-1 and it kills most things for only 3 mana. That's quite good. If it did the newer templating where it let you play the card up until the end of your next turn, then we would be into A range because that would be a pretty
almost always a
reliable 2-for-1. Yeah. Next is Voldaren Thrill Seeker. This is 2 and a red for a vampire warrior at rare. It's just a 1/1, but it has backup 2. So you get the 2+1/+1 counters, and the ability is 1, sacrifice this creature. It deals damage equal to its power to any target. Who's seeking the thrills here? I mean,
I think the joke here is you play this, you put 2+1/+1 counters on your 6/6, and you just nug your opponent for 8.
Totally. And you attack with it, right?
Yeah.
and then chuck it at their face.
I mean, even if you don't end up sacrificing the other creature, this is at very worst 3 mana for a 3/3 that you can pay 1 to sack it to deal 3. And getting to put the counter somewhere else is still very good. I mean, you play this, you put 2 counters on your 2/2 flyer. Now it's a 4/4 flyer. And then you have a 1/1 that lets you sack itself to deal 1. I don't really have a problem with that either.
Yeah, no, this is all good stuff. Just, honestly, if this card just read 2 and a red, 1/1, backup 2. I would already be like, that's very good, right? Like putting 2+1/+1 counters on a card is already just very powerful, and leaving behind even an expendable body that you can sacrifice or do with it. That's all fine. Like that would be into the B range for me. The fact that it can have this game ending effect or this removal spell-esque thing only adds to it. I would give it a B+. Like to me, that's the type of card that when you play it out, you're going to go, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I like B+ for Voldar and Thrillseeker.
All right. Invasion of Kaldheim is next. It's 3 and a red for a 4 defense battle. And it says, when Invasion of Kaldheim enters the battlefield, exile all cards from your hand, then draw that many cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play cards exiled this way. So the cards that were in your hand go away, but then you can play them until the end of your next turn, and then they're replaced by actual cards. Interesting. Transforms into Pyre of the World Tree, which is an enchantment that says, discard a land card. Pyre of the World Tree deals 2 damage to any target. And whenever you discard a land card, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. This is incredible. The design on this is really great, right? Because you just know you're going to be like, I'm going to ditch my whole hand. I'm not going to be able to play all the cards. And then I'm going to get stuck with a bunch of lands. And it's like, no problem. That's kind of exactly what you want here, right? Because this feels like Landfall, where it's like you get the best either way.
Yeah, no, this is pretty cool. The in terms of how it plays out, I don't think it's that good because it's a 4 mana spell that doesn't add to the board at all. Mm-hmm. And it kind of doubles the number of cards in hand, but you also can't really be, if you have a ton of cards in your hand, it means you weren't doing that much. And then playing another card like this still doesn't help you do that much. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of medium on this one. It just seems okay.
The upside is insane, right? Like
if you can flip it, look, this is one of those battles where if you can flip it, I think it's just awesome.
Yeah.
But it doesn't add it all to the board, and it's 4 mana. Like, I don't know how easy it is to do that,
Very difficult. Yeah, I think you would almost want this in the red-green battle flipping deck, that has creatures and effects that are almost like temporarily great at flipping battles, but then kind of go away. Yeah,
if you are building a deck to work with this, I think it can be good. This looks like a B to me, like a build around B.
B.
Where if you're putting in the work, then Invasion of Kaldheim can be really strong. But in a lot of cases, you're just not going to want to include this card like in your red-blue deck, for example.
Yeah, I agree. Finicky, but extremely high upside. Next one is another battle. It's called Invasion of Karsus. It is 2 red for a 4 defense battle. It says when it enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. And then it transforms into Refraction Elemental, which is a 4/4 creature. It's an elemental, and it has ward, pay 2 life. And it says whenever you cast a spell, Refraction Elemental deals 2 damage to each opponent. And that's any spell, by the way. That counts creatures, anything. Huh. So are you supposed to build around this so that it doesn't kill a bunch of your stuff? Or what's the joke here?
I think what you're trying to do with Invasion of Karsus is either have 4 toughness creatures or just use this as a way to like sweep the whole board. Mm-hmm. And then when you do that, ideally you have a 4/4, you kill everything, you attack and flip it. Obviously that would be great if you could do that.
Right.
But even if just a 3 damage spell tends to sweep boards pretty quickly and pretty effectively. So I think what a lot of times is going to happen is you're going to play this, kill everything, and then it's kind of like the battle that we talked about before, Invasion of Fiora, where you kind of wrath, and now you have this 4/4 battle or 4 toughness battle sitting there, and it's just not easy for your opponent to always defend it. They have to do something.
That makes sense. I mean, the play pattern seems obvious with this. It does hinge on it coming down on turn 4 probably most of the time. But
yeah, I think that this one I like a little less than Invasion of Fiora because red tends to want sweepers a little less than black, and this is not an unconditional sweeper, which cuts both ways.
Yeah.
It's obviously good if you're like turn 3, you play a 2/4, and then turn 4, you play this, right? But in a lot of the cases, I think you're going to end up treating this mostly as a sweeper. I think it's going to be okay. Invasion of Karsus looks like a B to me. It doesn't look crazy.
I think so too. I think the big caveat is if you're trying to be like a low to the ground red aggressive deck, this loses a ton of steam because it's just going to kill too many of your own guys. Next is Rampaging Raptor. This is 2 red for a 4/4 dinosaur. It's rare. It has trample and haste, and you can pay 2 and a red to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. Wow, this thing's nasty. And when it deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to target planeswalker that player controls or battle that player protects. Dang.
So this is the new questing beast. I mean, 4 mana, 4/4 trample haste, and you can spend mana to pump it up if you end up in a spot where that's good is awesome. And the fact that it just snipes planeswalkers or battles is even better. I give Rampaging Raptor an A.
I would too.
Sometimes you're just going to play this on turn 4. Your opponent's going to take 4 off the bat, and then they're going to look at their hand. They're going to be like, I guess the best I can do is block it with a 3/3 and a 2/2, and you'll pump it and get to deal an extra point of damage on top of that.
Yeah, and that's what they're hoping for, right? That you don't have a removal spell, combat trick, or anything to just keep your Rampaging Raptor alive for even one combat like that, because then it's over. Yeah, this is just on rate. It's an A, Rampaging Raptor. All right. Another Praetor, it's Urabrask, and the one named Praetors are here. So this is 2 red for a 4/4 legendary Phyrexian Praetor at Mythic Rare. It does have first strike, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it does 1 damage to target opponent. And it also says add red. And then you can pay a red to exile it and return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control at sorcery speed, and only if you've cast 3 or more instant and or sorcery spells this turn. They did make it just red though. I mean, this is 1 mana in addition
when
to
you
the
play
3
your third
spells.
spell, you get the red mana even to pay for this.
Exactly. So what does it become? The Great Work. Kind of a weird name. It is also a saga. And chapter 1 is the Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. Chapter 2 is create 3 treasure tokens. And chapter 3 is until end of turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from any graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile it instead, and exile the Great Work and return it to the battlefield as Urabrask again.
So this is the hardest one that we've seen to flip. We're going to see more of these, of course.
Seems
because
very difficult.
Playing 3 instants and sorceries in the same turn is a lot. Still, 4 mana, 4/4 first strike with some pretty significant upside is not a bad place to be. And if you can build a deck that has this, that does the work for this, I think that you'll be really happy with the result.
Well, let's give it 2 grades then.
Okay.
Let's put it into a normal deck where casting 3 instants and sorceries in the same turn will be almost impossible, right? You might have 4 or 5 total in the deck.
Yeah.
A couple of them might cost 5 mana or 4 mana. So that's just not going to be on the table. So you have a 4 mana, 4/4 first strike, and it does do the extra damage to the opponent, and you do get the mana advantage just if that happens to pop up, for those few times that you do.
Sometimes you will cast a spell even if you're never casting 3, right?
Right. So where does that put us? B?
No, 4 mana, 4/4 first strike is
B plus?
It's B plus range, yeah.
Okay. With that extra little ability. Now let's say your blue-red spells and you're trying to flip it. Now that is not going to guarantee it. It is still a difficult thing to do. You need a lot of very cheap instants and sorceries, which can make your deck worse, etc. But let's say you have now a shot at actually doing it. We're into the A range pretty easily, right?
Certainly. I mean,
yeah.
If you're the kind of deck that this flips easily in, imagine like you play this on turn 4 and your opponent doesn't kill it, you could just flip it the next turn. The bottleneck's going to be having the 3 spells more so than needing the mana to cast them, because it gives you a pretty solid rebate on it.
Would you try to lean that build towards red spells because of the rebate?
If you can, yeah. I mean, cantrips are going to be the most important because getting to draw extra cards makes it a lot more likely you'll assemble those 3 spells. But it's such a big threat. I think if I was playing against someone who's blue-red and they played this, I would try to kill it pretty much as soon as I could.
Yeah, and also it's just an insane blocker and attacker too. So B+ and easy A for the build around. What does Chandra Hope's Beacon do?
4 red for a legendary Planeswalker Chandra at Mythic Rare with 5 loyalty. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. So that's just a straight up static ability. Mm-hmm. The first spell you play gets copied. Great. Second, she's got a +2. Add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Okay. +1, exile the top 5 cards of your library. Until the end of your turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. So this one's tough and limited because it just straight up exiles 5 cards every time you do it.
That's a lot.
So you're not going to be, jamming on this one. But then she has a -X. Chandra deals X damage to each of up to 2 targets. So when you use the -X, you're basically in a spot where you get to play Chandra and you deal -4. It deals 4 to 2 targets. 6 mana, kill your 2 4/4s just right off the bat.
You're not splitting up that damage. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, that's pretty huge. That alone would make Chandra quite strong. She's also got cool play patterns like play Chandra +2 and then play a cheap removal spell that immediately gets copied.
Insane.
You've got the ability to play Chandra, and then if you have mana left over or she survives a turn, you just might use the +1 to try to look for something else. Because you can use that twice and be fine in most games. You just probably can't use it 4 times. And then the -X is so huge. Imagine Chandra +2 up to 7, play a bounce spell, bounce 2 things. Untap -6 or -7 and just completely nug your opponent for a ton.
Like that, still have your Planeswalker.
And still have a Chandra. Like that is great. So I think Chandra, it gets an A.
I do too.
Probably an A+, honestly.
Yeah, this is, especially with the amount of loyalty we're talking about here, 6 mana comes down at 5, goes up to either 6 or 7. Could go down in loyalty, but then it's getting immediate value. Yeah, I like A. I like straight up A for Chandra Hope's Beacon. And then if you put any effort into the build around part where you're the blue-red instants and sorceries deck, then it's going to be the easiest A+ you've ever seen, because that static ability is worth a card, not a 6 mana card, but it's worth a card on its own. Itali Primal Conqueror is next. I love these dinosaurs, by the way. 5 red for a 7/7 legendary elder dinosaur at rare. It's a trampler. So 7 mana, 7/7 trample. When it enters the battlefield, each player exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a non-land card. You may cast any number of spells from among the non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. What?
Unbelievable.
And you're getting one from them and from you?
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is a regular rare?
Compare this to the, Beyond the Multiverse card that milled 10 and puts a creature into play from each player. This is 7 mana for a 7/7 trample plus the top spell of each player's deck.
Oh my God. You can't whiff either. It just goes until it hits a spell and you get both spells right now. And here's the crazy part, Luis. I'm not even done. There's more. You can pay 9 in a Phyrexian green to transform it at sorcery speed. Admittedly, that is a ton of mana, but still, it becomes Itali Primal Sickness, which is an 11/11 trample indestructible legendary Phyrexian elder dinosaur. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters.
So,
whatever. Did you not just win the game off of your 7 mana 3-for-1?
Yeah, I would think so. Itali, I think, gets an A as well. It's
I agree.
Just an unbelievable card.
This could be an A+.
Yeah, this is pretty close to an A+. Yeah, I would be fine giving Itali an A+. 7 mana, 7/7 trample, plays 2 spells in addition to it, and then if they don't get rid of this, then maybe in a turn or 2, you can also just transform it if you need to. Not that I think it's gonna be too necessary.
Right. Your 7/7 trampler is going to clean up the game pretty nice with the 2 spells that you got for free. But the bar for A+ is usually like, if I'm behind, can I cast this and expect to live or turn the game around? And I think the answer is yes. Like, You could hit 2 creatures off of it.
You have to hit 2 spells,
pump spells to
and have a 7/7 not be good enough.
Right. I like A+ for Atali. This is better than some of the mythics. That card's insane. Next is City on Fire. This is 5 red for an enchantment at rare. It does have Convoke, and it says if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage instead.
Yeah, it's quite the card.
So how do you let's take the mana cost out of the equation here. Is it worth a card to have, let's say, the doubling effect that what was called Furnace?
Yeah.
Back in the day?
Furnace of Wrath made everything deal double damage, even your opponent's stuff. But if you're just asking, what does it do to basically make all your stuff deal double damage? It's not as good as probably +2/+2 to your team.
Okay.
But it's probably comparable or better than +1/+1.
And if I threw in triple?
Triple is very close to just all your creatures get like +X+O, and X is like a large number. Like your 2/2s deal 6, your 1/1s deal 3, your 4/4s deal 12. It stops mattering at some point. Like obviously every point can matter, but
right,
you just are in a spot where like your 5/5 dealing 15. Yes, it does mean they probably shouldn't block it, or they probably shouldn't let it through rather, but it's not gonna, make it so that dealing 15 and dealing 10 aren't that different, based on the situation.
And how good is this effect? Right, because like, for example, your 3/3 still trades with their 3/3, even though yours did 9.
Right.
Now, if it gets through, game ends real quick.
Yeah.
But you had to spend a whole card and you didn't actually add anything.
It doesn't make your creatures more likely to survive unless they have first strike.
Right.
Like
then it's
your 3/3 trades for your 3/3, like you said.
Trample. How does trample work?
It's weird. So let's say you have a 3/3 trample. And they block with a 1/1.
Yeah.
You can assign 1 to the creature, 2 to the opponent, and then the opponent takes 6, but it doesn't deal 9 - 1.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, it's not quite that easy.
They take 6. Okay. Where do you like this? I mean, this is a very difficult card because the raw power is absolutely there, but these types of cards are kind of fragile, right? Like they need a board. If you don't have if you're not ahead on board, if you're not able to do anything, they do a lot less, right? Like they make your creatures trade.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It does just feel though like triple is just such an obscene. Anything with 2 power or more just becomes this like insane threat. Like I would assume that you play City on Fire and then you win the game a lot of the time if you can get through for anything.
Part of the problem is it has Convoke, so it's not like an 8-mana spell, but if you're tapping 5 lands and 3 creatures, you don't have much of an attack left that turn.
No, that's true.
And this didn't add to the board in a way that will protect you a whole lot either.
Not at all.
So yeah, I'm a little concerned about that. I think that there is some amount of this is a win more card in a variety of ways.
I do, it's weird because even though it works really well with big creatures, I almost want to see it in a deck with just a bunch of like 2/2s and 3 powered small creatures that you can like dump a bunch of those creatures on the board, and then on turn 4, 5, or 6. Just tap everything out to play City on Fire. And now every creature you have actually matters. Like you attack with your 2/2 and your opponent really has to consider, how they're going to manage this.
Yeah.
That said, if they can, then City on Fire doesn't do anything. Again, if you're behind, it does something, but not really what you want.
I'm kind of thinking this card's not good. I think
kind of leaning that way myself.
I think it's like a build around C where if you can really go hard on the Convoke stuff, this could do something. It's kind of funny because like it also works the least well with like 1/1 tokens compared to a 2/2. But still, if you can reliably cast this and get to a point where it's actually on the board and you have a decent amount of creatures and you're not dead,
then it's game over. Then it's game over. Yeah,
but that's like a build around C. And my guess is this card's not going to have a very good win rate.
I'm going to go build around B, and I want to build it around small creatures rather than big, which might seem counterintuitive. Okay, that's it for red. Did not get all A's, but it did pretty good. Green is next. Deep Root Deeproot Wayfinder is the first card. It's 1 and a green for a 2/3 Merfolk Scout at rare. It says whenever it deals combat damage to a player or battle, surveil 1, then you may return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped.
2 mana 2/3 is pretty beefy on turn 2.
It is.
And then if they can't block it, you get to surveil, and if you hit a land, you just get a land for free. That's pretty cool.
That's cool.
This looks like a B. I mean, you're going to draw this in the middle of the game, and it's going to be kind of a vanilla creature because it's never getting through. But that's fine. The games you draw it on turn 2, it can kind of dominate. So that sounds like a B for me.
Yeah, I like B as well. Next is Invasion of Ikoria, which is green X for a battle. This one does have 6 defense. And it says, when Invasion of Ikoria enters the battlefield, search your library and or graveyard for a non-human creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle. So you're adding a premium to whatever it is that you go, whatever non-human creature card you search up, a significant one as well of double green. If you can manage to get this thing dead though, it becomes Zilortha, Apex of Ikoria, which is an 8/8 legendary dinosaur with reach. And it says for each non-human creature you control, you may have that creature assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. So it's an 8/8 super trampler. This one I'm not really in love with though, right? Like I have to pay green X to, I have to pay 5 mana to get a 3-drop for this thing. Is that okay?
Yeah. And that's not great. It's not a great deal.
And it is a little bit limited by the non-human clause, though I don't think that that's such a big deal in this set. I don't know. And then you've got this huge battle you have to win. It's 6 freaking defense. Like, I don't know. I'm not that thrilled with it. I might be understating it a little bit. Like maybe you have a bunch of extra mana, or maybe it's, anytime you can get a battle up and just have that opportunity.
No, this looks like one of those battles that you should just probably not put in your deck. Like you're going to spend 6 mana to get a 4 power creature or 4 cost creature. And then you have a 6 defense battle. That's just not hard to, like, it's not easy to flip that. Like, where are you doing that?
If it would this go up for you if you had like Vorinclex or something, which we'll get to in just a bit, like where you tack on an extra 2, make it into a 7-drop and go search it up, but it's like your best card or whatever.
You'd have to have something pretty good, I think, in order to.
Okay.
In order to make
like
this,
it.
This
This isn't working for me. Yeah.
I would probably give this an F. I just think I just don't think you can pay that premium.
I don't think so either. This is sort of like the trap that people fall into with demonic tutor style cards, where you're like, I can get any card I want for only 4 mana. It's like, yeah, you that doesn't really work the way you want it to. All right, next one is Invasion of Ixalan. This one's 1 and a green, so just a 2 mana, 4 defense battle, and it says when it enters the battlefield, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. And if you can get the 4 defense down and win the battle, it becomes Belligerent Regisaur, which is a 4/3 trample dinosaur that says whenever you cast a spell, it gains indestructible until end of turn. That's a nice card.
This one I like. I mean, 2 mana to get a permanent out of the top 5 is just passable. It's not like great, but think of it like an anticipate.
Yep.
It's kind of like a space filler. You'll put the card in your deck even if you're not like super stoked about it, right?
Yeah.
But then it leaves behind this 4 defense battle that flips into a pretty substantial card, like a card I'm definitely not embarrassed to play.
Definitely. And it's early enough. Yeah, it doesn't help you flip the battle, but whatever. It can find lands. It can find your 3-drop. It feels like you're kind of getting the battle on the battlefield for free-ish, or at least a very low cost. And then, if you decide to put the resources in and flip it, you'll be happy. I like C+ for Invasion of Ixalan, which I realize is a weird grade, but the front side is not a card I'd really want to play unless I had additional upside. And the additional upside's there, but not amazing. So I land on C+ for it.
Perfect grade. I think that's where I would land as well.
What does Ozolith the Shattered Spire do?
It says 1 and a green for a legendary artifact at rare. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on an artifact or creature you control, put that many +1/+1 counters +1 on it instead. So every time something is going to get +1/+1 counters, it gets one more. 1 and a green, tap, put a +1/+1 counter on target artifact or creature you control as a sorcery. And cycling 2 kind of randomly.
Wow, that's incredible.
So by itself, it's 2 mana, 2 tap, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature or artifact you control. So you can actually start stacking the counters on one of your incubates if you want, before you even want to flip it. It also works with all the like incubate / white green / whatever, all that stuff. Like it's kind of like a pseudo lord. And then it also just kind of has cycling, which I find funny. Like, I don't know.
I do too, but I love it because, you know, there are board states where you're looking and you're going, I don't have any creatures right now, or there's no way I'm going to have enough time to actually start piling up counters. So I can just bail on it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean,
those counters add up really fast, right? Like,
I mean, imagine you play a 3-drop, right? And then they play a 3-drop, then turn 4, you're like, play this, put 2 counters on my thing, attack you for 5.
Right.
They can't block. And then if they kill your creature, sure, maybe, you know, you traded 1 point and you spent extra mana, but then next turn, it's turn 5. You play another 2 or 3 mana creature and then just use Ozolith. It's like you played a 5-drop, except later when you still have those 5 drops to play.
Right. And then next turn, you can put it on an attack again. It makes every creature in your deck something that must be dealt with, admittedly at a cost. Like it is not free by any stretch of the imagination, but this seems well worth it to me. And I love the cycling just in the fact that, like, if that game plan isn't there, you can just jump ship and go a different direction.
A- for Ozolith. It's also just going to really pop off in the decks that already have all this stuff going on. Like, it's going to be closer to an A+ in those decks. Definitely.
A- for Ozolith. This card just seems to be the type of card that can completely take over the game. Polukranos Reborn is next. This is green for a 4/5 legendary Hydra at Rare. It's got reach, and it has 6 and a white Phyrexian mana to transform it at sorcery speed, and it becomes Polukranos Engine of Ruin, which is a legendary Phyrexian Hydra that is a 6/6 reach lifelink. When I said I like cards, you know, in the A+ range that are make it so you can't lose on the next combat, well, that covers all your bases there. And it says whenever it or another non-token Hydra you control dies, you get a 3/3 green and white Phyrexian Hydra creature token with reach and another one with lifelink. So flashbacks to
Wormcoil.
Yeah. So now the question is are you transforming that? Like, look, let's take this in order. The mana here is very difficult, right? We're looking at a triple green to get it onto the battlefield. So if you're playing, let's say, a 9/8 split towards forests, does that make this equivalent to roughly a 6-drop?
Yeah, I think
5,
it's close.
7?
I think it's close to a 6-drop.
Okay, so if I said, let's say, 4 green for a 4/5 reach, you wouldn't be excited, but you could do worse, right?
4 green for 4/5 reach.
Yeah.
I think I'd be pretty unhappy about that.
Because you should be paying 5 for that, right?
Yeah.
But if you can get to 6 mana, and this one really you can just get to 6 mana because the thing has lifelink. I mean, now you're getting a 6/6 reach lifelink. Like, if you can flip that on your turn and just jam with it, that's pretty awesome.
Yes, if you're able to flip it, it just becomes unbelievable.
Right. So this is a late game card. Where do you see it fitting in given its triple green mana cost?
I think that this is powerful enough that what basically is going to happen if you have Polukranos is you're going to try to make it so that you can play 10 forests or so. And then you're going to play this in the turn 5 or 6 range. But also, yes, not being able to play at turn 6 is a drawback, but getting to play at turn 6 and still having 3 mana left over to spend on something else is still quite relevant.
It is. Would you play it in a 9/8 split towards forests? You kind of have to, right? It's still worth it.
Yeah, you would just put this card in your deck.
I think so too.
I think it's good enough that you'd be happy enough to do that.
All right. So if we're clearing the hurdle for mana, what grade does it get? Because it looks great to me if you can cast it. I mean, really great.
this is an A-level card.
It definitely is.
It's a 4/5 reach. It's not the easiest to kill. And then when you flip it into a 6/6 reach lifelink, you get that attack for 6 health right away. And then if they kill it,
health, you attack with your unit and you get your 6.
All right.
It's life. You can't call it health on our. That's like if we had a basketball podcast and you're like, yeah, he scored a lot of touchdowns last game or something.
I
These game designers,
a lot of games.
You know, yeah, it's easy for me. I only play Magic. I don't have to get it mixed up. No, but I hear you. And even if it died in that attack, you're still happy with the outcome.
Yeah, is kind of what I'm saying. And yeah, I think it's worth trying to bias your mana a little bit. And it's an A-. Like if you can get to 10 or 11 forests, it's even better. But either way, it's quite good.
The only drawback is the triple green. But yeah, once you're there. A- for Polukranos Reborn. Next is Tribute to the World Tree. This is also triple green, but it's an enchantment at rare. And it says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card if its power is 3 or greater. Otherwise, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. Wow. Getting this on the battlefield would be nice.
Yeah.
But this to me is like almost an F. Which is weird, but you need to have this down and then cast creatures after it's down. And like with Polukranos Reborn, that's not the case. It is a great permanent to have on the battlefield whenever you can cast it. That is not true for Tribute. If this is the last card out of your hand, you're kind of hanging on for the ride and hoping you draw creatures. If you're mono green and you cast this on turn 3, I think this card's excellent. Like everything you do after it is just loading up your hand or building out a huge board.
Yeah, they really knew what they were doing with the casting cost on this one. I think
they got us pretty good.
Because if this was 2 and a green, you'd be really happy with this card.
Very happy.
You just play it on turn 3, and then you just start racking up the value, drawing cards, putting counters, just getting all this stuff. The problem is in the Polukranos situation where you can't cast this until turn 6. All of a sudden, how many creatures do you have left? So this is like a build around A, where like if you can build a 12 forest mana base and play this card, it's going to be awesome for you if you can play it early. It's just not that good if you can't play it till late.
Yeah. We'll give it a build around A, but as a normal card, I would say it's like a D- or an F. I don't think on a normal mana base that you're going to be able to get this down consistently enough to take advantage. What does Wrenn and Realm Breaker do?
This is 1 green for a legendary Planeswalker Wrenn at Mythic Rare. Sorry, the Mythic and the gold symbols are pretty similar to me.
They are similar.
So 4 loyalty, static ability of lands you control have tap at 1 mana of any color.
Okay.
+1, up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste until your next turn. It's still a land. So this defends itself.
Oh, so it's until your next turn.
Until your next turn, yes. -2, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards, just those 3 cards, into your hand. And -7, you get an emblem with you may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard.
That's a cool card. Only a 3 mana, 4 loyalty, and a decent +1 on it as well.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't untap the land, right?
No. So if you play this on turn 3, you won't have something to defend with.
Okay, and you can +1, but not turn the land into a creature if you'd like. Up to right.
Yes, you can just use the +1 and not do anything with it if that's what you want to do.
Okay.
So,
how good is this thing? I mean, this seems great to me.
So you play this for 3, making your lands tap for any colors, kind of whatever.
Right.
And then
you plus it to 5, say go. They attack it. That's a little less exciting. So I guess you really want to play this on turn 4.
Yes, I think that you want to play this where you can keep the land around.
And have it block.
Yeah, it also has vigilance, so you do get to even attack them with the land.
Yeah, turn 4, it's really strong. But turn 3, I wonder if it's just 2 shields down, for even at 5 loyalty. It may survive that combat, but you give up a lot.
Yeah. And late in the game, it doesn't really protect itself that well because it doesn't give reach. It gives vigilance and hexproof, so they at least can't kill the creature that the land and get through or whatever.
Yeah.
I think Ren and Realmbreaker looks pretty mediocre to me. Like -3, -2 draw a card, but it's draw a permanent from the top 3 cards of your deck.
Right.
No, I guess this is a cheap enough Planeswalker with enough loyalty. No, this is fine. This is like a B.
Yeah, I think it's
a solid Planeswalker. There's some games where you're not going to have a whole lot of stuff to do with this, but if you can defend it and it does help you with those lands reasonably well, then you're going to end up feeling all right about the whole deal.
I think so too. It's a B or trending towards B plus. I just think that you really probably want to wait to play it on 4 more often than not. Next is Doomscar Warrior, which is 2 green for a 4/3 human warrior at rare. It's got backup 1 and then all of this. Trample, so that's kind of cool. And then it says, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or battle, look at that many cards from the top of your library. That many being the amount of damage.
That much damage.
Okay.
Yeah.
You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Nice. That's pretty
creature
cool.
or land means you're pretty likely to hit. Backup 1 in trample means if you have like a 3/3 in play, you make it a 4/4 trample. Maybe they don't have a good block and you kind of get to draw an extra card. And you're left with a 4/3 trample that has this like saboteur ability whenever it hits. And the trample, of course, helps.
Or
really solid card.
4 mana, 5/4 trample with that ability.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
good too.
That's like the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
That's an A-. Doomscar Warrior is just a really good card.
Yeah, I think so too. This is another one that's just pushed on rate. Next is Glistening Dawn. This is also 2 green. This is a sorcery at rare. It says incubate X twice, where X is the number of lands you control.
I like this card a lot.
Is that good?
I think think about this on 6 mana, right? That's like the natural price point of this. Cast this, make 2 incubate 6s, immediately incubate 1. So you paid 6 mana for a 6/6 that leaves a 6/6 in play.
Okay, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What if you play it on turn 4? You don't have anything, but the next turn you can wake up 2 4/4s?
Yeah, that I think you don't want to do very often. Obviously, if you have to, you have to. But I think that you will end up in a spot where you cast this on 6 a lot of the time. That seems like the place to be.
That's very powerful.
Yeah.
Just you're getting 2 huge creatures for a reasonable rate on either. Right? You said 6, so you're going to have to put in a total of
6
8
mana,
mana.
6/6, and then next turn you get to wake up another 6/6. Yeah, that's great.
8 mana for 2 6/6s that you can do on an installment plan however you want. That is awesome. I
mean, this card is just good, right?
Is it an A-? Is it just an A? Like, that's like the thing you describe's really good.
Yeah.
Like, that's the type of card that it isn't flashy, but like if your opponent is just like, here's a 6/6 and next turn there's another one, it's just like, how am I gonna? That's just too much.
It's a lot of action. Like your opponent's gonna really feel it when you activate the second one. And if imagine on 8 mana, you just make 2 8/8s right away.
Yeah. I'm tempted to give it a B plus, but my intuition says that it's actually an A-. So I'm going to go A-.
I like A- on Glistening Dawn. This feels like one of those cards that's going to break stalemates wide open.
Totally.
The biggest downside is if they can deal with the first one, then they get a little bit of tempo based on that. But you still have a second one sitting there.
But I mean, it's the tempo that they would have gotten if they killed your Colossal Dreadmaw the turn you cast it, right? It's like you live with it. You know, you pay 6 mana for a creature. Sometimes they kill it. Next is Invasion of Chandalar. Oh man, they're going way back. This is 3 green for a 4 defense battle that says when it enters a battlefield, return up to 3 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. And then if you can get the 4 defense down, it becomes Leyline Surge, which is an enchantment that says at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Man, this is one that really puts that carrot way out front, right? Where it's like, if you can do it, you're drawing 3 and you're getting all this free stuff. But man, if you don't, it's like the downside of this card is so much higher, right? 5 mana doesn't affect the board at all. And you may not get the 3 cards. You may not get 2. You may get 1 or even 0 in some bad scenarios where like you're just staring at this card and it doesn't, like, because it doesn't mill you. It doesn't add to, you have to have permanent somehow enter, you know, basically you have to have creatures have died or milled yourself.
Yeah.
Ugh.
This one's tough. This one's a lot of like, well, but if it works out exactly the way we want, then it does the thing, you know?
Totally. I'm going to go lower on Invasion of Shandalar.
Yeah, I think this card's going to underperform based on compared to most people's expectations of you're going to look at this at 5 mana, draw 3, and then maybe it flips into this giant mana generating machine. I think what's often going to happen is you're going to have this card and you're going to be like, well, I have only 2 targets. I guess that's okay. Or I have 1 good target and like 1 bad one. And that's like, ugh. And then, I can't really flip it because I spent 5 mana not affecting the board.
Right.
And then you do flip it. You have to wait a whole turn cycle to put a thing into play. This
and you may just look down and have had the mana for it anyway.
Honestly, I think Invasion of Shandalar, I would give it a sideboard B. I would bring it in attrition battles.
Yes.
I would typically not want to
think I wouldn't
deck
play
this card.
This. I mean, there's a 1 and a green, you know, get a permanent back from your graveyard that card sees play or sees print, almost never sees play. I don't think that ability scales well. It's not like it gets better the more pressure you put on having good permanence. So I don't think I would play Invasion of Shandalar outside of the scenario that you said. Somebody's going to have to beat me with it.
I want it in my deck against you when we're both playing like green black against green blue or whatever. But yes, in general, I don't think this is where you want to be.
I'm going to go D- on Invasion of Shandalar. I'm slamming it.
I think it's a sideboard B. I think it's a good sideboard card.
B. Yeah.
Yeah, but not a card I would want to main deck.
Vorinclex is next. So I mentioned it. What does it do? It's 3 green for a legendary Phyrexian Praetor at Mythic Rare. It is a 6/6 trample reach for 5, which puts it as like a B+, knocking on A.
Yeah, I mean, that's just pretty big and
it's great on defense and it's great on offense and it's super efficient. So that's really great. And then it says, when it enters a battlefield, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, then put them into your hand and shuffle. So you just get 2 extra land cards. Then you can pay 6 green, exile it, and return it to the battlefield transformed at sorcery speed. This one doesn't have any cheapening, though. You just got to pay the full amount. And it is the Grand Evolution, which, of course, is the saga. Chapter 1, mill, yikes, 10 cards? Put up to 2 creature cards from among them, milled cards onto the battlefield. All right, fine. Chapter 2, distribute 7 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. What? And chapter 3 is, until end of turn, creatures you control gain 1. This creature fights target creature you don't control, and then you exile this thing and return it back as Vorinclex. Maybe in a commander game, you need all this extra stuff, but I mean, you've already like, this is ludicrous, right? Like,
yeah, it's not close.
Anyway, this is an A+.
Yeah, I mean, look, have you thought about the situation where you cast this and then they kill it? You only got a 3-for-1 because you got 2 lands out of your deck. Like, that's on the low end.
Just ludicrous. It stabilizes the board. It's the best attacker at its mana slot. And then it has this Grand Evolution is just insane. Like 7 +1/+1 counters, however you want among creatures you control. And somehow you were so bad that you got 2 free lands, 2 free creatures on the battlefield, 7 +1/+1 counters. You didn't manage to win the game at that point, and you get to do it all again after your creatures can just fight everything for 1 mana each. I mean, I don't know. This to me is almost getting to the point where you're just like, it's almost unimaginative. It's so brutally good, you know? At any rate, it's an A+ for Vorinclex, so.
Easy A+.
Last green card is Ancient Imperator. This is 5 green for a 6/6 dinosaur rare. It's got Convoke. It has Trample. It has Ward 2. And it enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. For each creature that convoked it? What?
So this is going to be like 5 mana for a 10/10 trample ward 2 is kind of the way I would like to start to look at it.
That is exactly what I was thinking.
And that's fantastic.
It's incredible.
No, I have no issue with that at all.
I do not either. How much does Ward 2 make it an A? Like, because I'm thinking A- for Ancient Imperiosaur because it's still pretty expensive, and ultimately it's just sort of a crap ton of power and toughness. But it is like an insane amount of it, and it has trample.
Yeah, I was thinking an A- for the Imperiosaur. Maybe just a flat A. I don't know.
It's close either way.
Yeah. If you get this card, you do want to go hard on the cheap creatures, because if you can cast this with 3 creatures on turn 4, the game is just so over. And even on turn 5, a lot of the removal that would kill this is very difficult to do with Ward 2, because they're probably spending 5 mana or 4 mana to kill it. So I think Ancient Imperiosaur does a lot of work there. I just give it an A.
Okay.
It's a great card.
A for just a huge amount of power and toughness. All right, that moves us to white. Our first white card is Progenitor Exarch. This is white XX for a 1/2 Phyrexian Cat Cleric. It's rare. When it enters a battlefield, you incubate 3 X times.
Right. So you play this for 3 mana, you get a 1/2 plus incubate 3. You play this for 5 mana, you get incubate 3 twice. That sort of thing. And then the fact that it can tap to transform target incubator token you control means the 1/2 is actually pretty relevant, especially if you cast this for 7 mana. You have a lot of tokens that you want to transform.
How happy are you with the 3 mana slot?
Pretty happy still. 3
Pretty
mana
good.
1/2 that put a token into play, and if they don't kill the 1/2, which, I mean, if they do, you're probably okay with them killing a 1/2. If they don't, just turn 4, you tap to transform it. So it's like a Blade Splicer. You got a 3/3 and a 1/2 for 3 mana. And then this works with the other incubate cards you have overall.
And then where do you think the sweet spot is? Is it 3? Is it 5?
Really, this is a perfect example of a scaling card that I'm happy on 3. I'm happy on 5. I'm happy on 7, though I don't expect it to happen quite so much.
And I guess there's not really a world where you'd want to play it on 1.
No, that I don't really see happening.
Okay, so what do you want to go? B+ for Progenitor?
I would go to B+. Yeah, I think it's
just a solid little 2 bodies.
Just a good card.
Yep.
No real downsides.
Dusk Legion Duelist is 1 and a white for a 2/2 Vampire Soldier at rare. It's got Vigilance, and it says whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Dusk Legion Duelist, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. It's actually not that great as a 1 and a white 2/2 Vigilance, right? It's like, okay, sometimes those make it in. But
it's okay.
But with the +1/+1 counters, you're in business.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do that, and it makes all of them into good value plays. It's not quite play this on turn 2 and just trade it off, because you probably want to have this stick around so you can get a little bit more value out of it. But I'm really happy to put this card into any deck that has even like 1 or 2 ways to get counters on it. Because also, you play against an opponent, they don't know how well it works. And you play this, they might go out of their way to kill it, especially if they have sorcery speed removal. Because it's just one of those cards like, I don't know, Marshall, you're playing against an opponent, let's say playing white-green is the worst, but even like white-black, and they play this card and they pass the turn over to you, are you going to be like, I should see if they have counters before
No, I'm killing it. Yeah, for sure. So, and it also has, it's a rare, which makes people more scared of it for whatever reason. I mean, I like build around B for Dusk Legion Duelist if you're doing +1/+1 counters. If you don't have any ways to do counters, it's like a D+ or something, like C-.
C-.
Sure.
2 mana 2/2 Vigilance is not a card you really want in your deck.
Yeah, it's like fringe playable. But I like it as a solid build around B if you're doing counters. And I don't think you need to be doing that much either. Next is Invasion of Gobakon, which is 1 and a white for this one's interesting. This is only a 3 defense battle. And it says when it enters a battlefield, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as the card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast. that doesn't remind you of something. If you can get the 3 defense down, it becomes Light Shield Array, which is an enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. And then you can sacrifice this to give creatures you control hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It's a little awkward.
Yeah. So it does help if you can like kind of make it so that their curve is disrupted, which helps you like maybe try to aggro out this battle. But it again doesn't affect the board. It is nice that when you play it, you know, you're when you flip it, you're probably going to get some counters on some stuff.
Yeah, it's just tough because it's like this one to me gets you ahead on kind of a razor's edge and asks you to stay there. And if anything goes wrong, it's not great, right? Like it's not actually taking a card from them, right? It's just slowing down that process a little bit.
Yeah.
Then it's saying,
and typically that effect, by the way, plays way better in Constructed because in Limited, your opponent eventually just casts the card. In Constructed, it's not quite that easy.
Exactly. And then you need to have the Light Shield Array down, you know, after you've attacked, ideally to get it transformed, etc. But man, if that doesn't happen, you know, it can be very difficult to get that because you only need the +1/+1 counters thing to happen once, right? Like, because then you're ahead and now you get to stay ahead because you can continue to attack. But if your creature gets killed or you can't flip it, you really haven't done much. It seems very finicky. Also, like, imagine drawing this card in the late game. Is it good then?
Pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not too impressed with this.
It just feels like the array is saying if you had good attacks, now they're really good. But the hard part is getting to having good attacks. It's not making your creatures better after they've done so. Yeah. So I'm a little down. I'm a little down on the Invasion of Gobakhan. I could see it just running away with the game where it's like the perfect curve. It fits perfectly. But man, I think a lot of times you just want to play a 2-drop on 2. You don't want to be playing this, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. This is one I'm most willing to be wrong about if it just curves perfectly and it just sort of does its thing. But it looks like sketchy territory to me. And I would give it a lower grade as a result. I would give it like a C. Yeah.
I think that I would give Light Shield Array / Invasion of Gobakhan probably like a C-, honestly.
Yeah, it doesn't look that good. What does Guardian of Girpur do?
This is a 2 and a white for an angel at rare. It's a 3/3 flying.
Wow.
And when it enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 target creature artifact you control, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Pretty great.
That's fantastic. Is there an obvious use for the blink? The slow blink?
There's a bunch of creatures with ETB abilities.
Okay. But like it doesn't work on your tokens.
No, you don't want to target your incubator tokens. That would not be too effective.
Yeah. Still, a 3-mana 3/3 flyer with any type of upside is something I'm already interested in. I would go B+ on Guardian of Girpur. It doesn't feel like the blink is like perfectly suited to the format.
Honestly, I would go A-. It's a 3-mana 3/3 flying, and it probably does something decent with the turn you play it.
I would describe it as a 3-mana 3/3 flying that occasionally will do something decent.
Yeah, these effects tend to be pretty good.
Like, I mean, you want to play it on 3 though, right? Like,
yeah, but
you have one.
If you draw it on 3, it's still really good, like as a 3/3 flyer. But then in the late game, it's almost always like something, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, does it give gets its value?
does it? Yeah, but it's always in like insane formats. Does this give you? Does it give a creature vigil? Like if you attack with your 2/2 and then blink it, you're good. So that's already a little bit. Yeah, B+ A- for Guardian of Girpur. That card's great. Next is Invasion of Theros. This is 2 and a white for a battle. It's got 4 defense and it says when it enters a battlefield, search your library for an aura, god, or demigod card. Reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. And if you can win the battle, it becomes Ayara Ever Sheltering, which is a 4/4 legendary god, enchantment creature, by the way. And Ayara Ever Sheltering has lifelink and indestructible as long as you control at least 3 other enchantments. And whenever another enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card. This feels a little bit like, what are you doing here? Like, are you lost?
Yeah, this looks more like a constructed card.
Yeah.
Paying 3 mana on top of the cost of whatever card you get to do something with it is just not a good deal.
Right.
And then again, these are the kind of battles that I think are a little bit of a trap, where you're just like paying 3 to maybe draw a card. Not even every deck draws a card. And then off of this, and then if you flip it, it's good, but it's not even like crazy. So yeah, I'm not super into Fiora Ever Sheltering / Invasion of Theros.
Yeah, and it just gets so difficult when they don't actually help flip. So I would go D on Invasion. I don't. There may be a niche archetype or something that we're not quite catching, but it certainly doesn't just fit cleanly into the format.
Yeah.
Holy crap! Monastery Mentor's back. I didn't.
Oh
see that.
yeah, you do love to see it. I love Monastery Mentor.
Me too. It's a 2 and a white for a 2/2 human monk at Mythic Rare. It has prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you create a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess. This is a
Fantastic card.
1 card army.
Yeah, I mean, you just play this, and as long as you have any sort of non-creature spells to play after, like it's going to be ridiculous how easy it is going to be to win.
Yeah, and you can build around it, in subtle ways, a few extra cantrips that you might not normally play. But even if you're just doing anything removal wise or card draw or anything, Monastery Mentor completely takes over a game. Anything at instant speed is extremely difficult for the opponent to plan for, both when you're attacking them and when they're attacking you. I mean, I give Monastery Mentor an A. You technically have to build around it a little bit by,
but not even that much.
But it's like non-creature spells. It's just like every deck has 8 of those, right? So like, there you go. So A for Monastery Mentor. You good with that?
Yeah, I love it.
Archangel Elspeth is next. This is 2 white for a 4 loyalty legendary Elspeth at Mythic. +1, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. Oh, how times have changed. -2, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature. It becomes an angel in addition to its other types and gains flying. And the ultimate is -6, return all non-land permanent cards with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Assume I will just be ignoring that part.
Yeah, I mean, not even necessarily. You're like, play Archangel Elspeth +1/+1, and then maybe you've got a couple things to get back, but
I just feel like I'd probably rather just keep making 1/1s or start pumping them up, but whatever. Because I get to keep Elspeth, like I get to keep the train rolling. Card's awesome. I mean, 1/1s with lifelink to protect itself. The lifelink is nice, but even just any 1/1, the original Elspeth Planeswalker had that, and it was awesome then, and it's still great. And then, I mean, there's a natural play pattern of play this, plus it, have Elspeth not die, then -2, you make a 3/3 lifelinking angel with flying.
There's really no wrong way to do this.
No. Just make sure that you activate it every turn and you'll be fine. You can just randomly click which one of the things. The only question is A or A+.
A+. I mean,
sure.
You're going to play Elspeth, and I think your opponent is just going to feel like they're completely screwed.
Yeah. All right. Elish Norn. This is one of your favorite creatures. Well, what does Elish Norn do now?
So 2 white for a 3/5 legendary Phyrexian Praetor at Mythic Rare with Vigilance. It says whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you or a permanent you control, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1. So it's kind of an obnoxious trigger, to be honest, really, because a lot of the time your opponent is not necessarily going to there's just a lot of bookkeeping. On Arena, you're going to have a bunch of triggers. It's not the most powerful trigger in the world. It's not nothing, but basically what it's going to end up happening is you're going to get to tax your opponent where they have to pay either life or mana, and kind of end up in a spot where they're not faced with good decisions in any way there.
Mm-hmm.
And then
extraordinarily annoying.
Yes. And then what's going to happen is if you have 2 and a white and you can sack 3 other creatures, you can exile Elish Norn, and return to the battlefield transformed as a sorcery. So it's 3 mana and sack 3 creatures, and then you end up getting the Argent Etchings, which is a saga like the others. The first chapter is incubate 2 5 times, then transform all incubator tokens you control. So it puts 5 2/2s into play. Creatures you control, the second chapter is creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike until end of turn. And then the chapter 3 is destroy all other permanents except lands, artifacts, and Phyrexians you control. Exile, or sorry, not you control. Destroy all other permanents except artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians, then exile Ardent Teachings and return it as Elish Norn. So you play Elish Norn. She's a 3/5 vigilance, which is pretty burly to start with. Has this weird tax where your opponent, every time something gets into combat, they have to pay 2 life or a mana. But the real money is if you sack 3 other creatures, all of a sudden you get 5 2/2s, then they all get +1/+1 and double strike, and then it blows up a bunch of stuff. This actually is not the strongest chapter 3 because your opponent might have a bunch of these things, but it doesn't matter because you get Elish Norn back.
Right.
And you got 5 3/3 double strikers on the way. So
right.
Yeah, I mean,
the only question is, how hard is it to get to the point of sacrificing 3 other creatures, and what's the risk involved with that?
Yeah.
Like if you pay the 2 in the white and sacrifice the creatures, an ability goes on the stack, right? That says,
your opponent can definitely kill Elish Norn in response.
Okay.
So there is a risk if your opponent passes with a bunch of mana up, maybe don't shove all in on this. But
right. Because the other ones, it's one thing to meet some requirement, but then you just pay mana. And if they interrupt it, well, they were going to kill it anyway. But here, like, you could blow up your whole board.
Yeah. I think that this is an A, whereas the other Predators were an A+.
I agree.
But still very, very good.
Insane card. Still 4 mana, 3/5 vigilance is already kind of like, oh man, that's huge. Next is Heliod the Radiant Dawn, which is 2 white for a 4/4 legendary enchantment creature god. At rare, when Heliod enters the battlefield, return target enchantment card that isn't a god from your graveyard to your hand. And that's a lot of extra text in a set that doesn't care about enchantments or gods. You can pay 3 and a Phyrexian blue to transform it at sorcery speed. So you got a 4 mana 4/4, but the next turn you can just pay your 3 or 4 mana depending to transform it into Heliod the Warped Eclipse, which is a 4/6 legendary enchantment creature Phyrexian god that lets you cast spells as though they had flash, and spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each card your opponents have drawn this turn.
Just really weird, but
this is a bizarre card.
Yeah, I don't really get what's going on here, but that's okay. So the front
4
side,
mana 4/4.
but you have to have an enchantment to get back, which isn't going to happen very often. And then you can transform it to a 4/6 that makes your spells 1 cheaper, and your opponent's, it has flash. This looks like a C, honestly. I don't think Heliod's going to be that good.
I mean, it has to be a little. I mean, I think a 4 mana 4/4 is above a C.
Okay, C plus.
Yeah, because occasionally you'll get a card back. This doesn't fit into the set particularly well, but has enough stats to get it into the playable plus range. So C plus, maybe B minus if you've got a couple of targets that you could get enchantments. Next is Boonbringer Valkyrie. This is 3 white for a 4/4 angel warrior at rare. It has backup 1. And the thing gets flying, first strike, and lifelink.
Yeah, this is Baneslayer. Boonbringer Valkyrie is an A+. Like, you play this, you give one of your creatures this big lifelink flying attack and a ++1 counter permanently, and then you just end up with a 4/4 flying first strike lifelink. You just play that for 5 mana without all the backup stuff. A+ for Boonbringer Valkyrie.
Agreed. This I think might end up being one of the best cards in the set. This is in some ways better than like a Baneslayer Angel type card because of the backup ability to get that attack in, so that you don't have to sit there and wait for your opponent to have sorcery speed removal to kill your, in this case, Valkyrie, and then kill you. You could survive even beyond that. And as you mentioned, the card itself, just at face value, is already an A. So that's an A+ to me. This could be one of the best cards in the set, full stop.
Easily.
Next is Knight Errant of Eos. This is 4 and a white for a 4/4 human knight at rare. It's got convoke. I like that. And when Knight Errant of Eos enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards with mana value X or less from among them, where X is the number of creatures that convoked Knight Errant of Eos. Put the revealed cards in your hand and then shuffle. So that's actually not that great, right, Luis? Like,
no,
if you use 2 creatures.
If you convoke it with 2 creatures, you'll get 6 cards, and then you can get 2 drops, which you're probably not going to get out of 6 cards.
Okay, so you do get both then. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, still not great. You need to get to 3 to make it so that you can like have a shot at getting 2 cards more reliably, right?
Yes.
Still, what do we like for a 4 and a white 4/4 with convoke? That would be like a solid common in the set, right?
Yeah, and if you convoke it with 3, it's kind of close to a Mole Drifter. You got a 4/4 and you probably drew at least a card, maybe 2. And obviously, if you can nut draw and convoke it for 5, you just draw whatever your top 2 creatures are, and that's going to be pretty good too.
Yeah, out of 6 cards. I like it. I mean, look, let's not put it next to Boonbringer Valkyrie, but like this looks like a B to a B plus to me for Knight Errant of Eos.
Look, a creature heavy deck makes it, work in every way, right?
Yes, it rewards you.
It rewards you on both sides, and yeah, I think in a creature heavy deck you can call Knight Errant of Eos like a B plus.
I agree, and even if you're not super creature heavy, you can still play it. Sunfall is our last white card. Actually, it's 3 white for a sorcery at rare. It says exile all creatures. Incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. Nice.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
That's sweet.
Yeah, you end up getting one of the best wraths that we've seen in limited in quite some time out of this card.
Definitely.
So
especially at regular rare.
Yeah, not being a mythic, it's just a straight up rare. It's just very good.
I like it at A for Sunfall.
I think it's probably an A plus.
Could be.
It exiles too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge too.
And you end up with like a 6/6 in play. Like that's just incredible.
Man, I think the only downside is that it is in white, which is like a convoke creature heavy color, where if this was in black or something, it might be even better. But this is going to like wreak havoc on sealed format. This is going to be a card you're always going to have to consider if your opponent's in white. How all in do you want to go? Yeah. I like A. You like A plus for Sunfall. One more color to go, and then we've got a few gold cards and very few colorless. But blue is our last color. Let's see if we save the best for last. I don't think anything's beating black, but we'll see. This is Fairy Mastermind. Look familiar? That is 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Fairy Rogue at rare. It has flash and flying. And whenever an opponent draws their second card each turn, you draw a card. But here's the thing. It has the activated ability of 3 and a blue. Each player draws a card. And of course, this is the card for Yuta Takahashi, our world champion from last year.
Yeah, very cool.
Super cool. So jealous. He can see his own card. How good is it? I mean, it's a 2-mana, 2/1 flash flyer, which is already quite strong. And then, the joke here, of course, is that if you activate the ability on your opponent's turn, you get to draw an extra card in addition to the one that they get and the one that you get.
So 2-mana, 2/1 flash flying, obviously just a good start. And then getting to spend 4 to make them draw 1 and you draw 1.
Well,
and then another 1.
2, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is probably like an A minus. Fairy Mastermind is just a really good card.
You think so? I was going to go B plus.
I think it's close. I mean, it's so aggressive. 2-mana, 2/1 flying flash, and then pretty easy to end up in a spot where you just are pumping mana into it and getting a lot of value. And even if you don't end up doing that, you just have this flying flash creature that can attack and block and do all those things.
Yeah, I think the way I break it down is that the flash part of it is fine, but not really that relevant. Like it's okay.
It's true.
But if we have
something,
right? So now, if we have a 2/1 flash, a 2/1 flyer for 2, that's pretty good. That's C plus. Approaching B minus depending on other factors. But I feel like you can only activate the activated ability like maybe once in a game. Like if you've dumped 8 mana to give your opponent 2 cards, like you can have 20. Like you're just going to lose because they're going to just dump all the stuff on the battlefield with their 8 mana that they didn't have to spend to get these cards in your hand. So I feel like the times when it's safe to actually activate this are somewhat infrequent, and it is not a particularly good defending creature. Like it'll trade off with something small. So it doesn't necessarily buy you the time to use all those extra cards after the mana deficit hits. So I'm a little lower on it. I think it's like a B. Like, I think it's pretty good.
Okay, I could go B plus.
All right.
Does seem like a good card at most stages of the game, but I agree you can't activate it very often.
Rona, Herald of Invasion.
Oh, the flash actually matters for something relevant.
Oh, if you have 6 mana?
No, if your opponent doesn't know you have this and casts a card draw spell, you can flash this in and then just draw a card.
Oh, that's nasty.
That's sick. I mean, that doesn't seem
so mean.
That seems relevant.
That's great. Next is Rona, Herald of Invasion. This is 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary human wizard. And it says, whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap it. Oh, man. Sure. You can tap it to draw a card and then discard a card. All right. So we've got a looter for 2 mana and 3 toughness. And then you can pay 5 and a Phyrexian black to transform it at sorcery speed into Rona Tolarian Obliterator, which is a 5/5 legendary Phyrexian wizard with trample. Why does this have trample? Whenever a source... Oh, sure. Is it? Whenever a source deals damage to Rona, it sure sounds like it. That source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land card, you may put it on the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Wow. Yeah, this one just ramped up and ramped up and ramped up. But you kind of had me at 2 mana, 1/3 looter.
Yeah, 2 mana, 1/3 looter is already good. And then you spend 5 and a black Phyrexian mana to turn into this 5/5 trample that they really don't want to get into combat with.
5/5 unblockable.
This we can give an A-. This is a very good card.
Definitely. I like A- for Rona. Next is Chrome Host Seed Shark. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/4 flying Phyrexian shark at rare. It says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. They don't make it hard these days, do they, Luis? Like,
no, 3 mana, 2/4 flyer. I mean, the stats on that are fantastic. And then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you just generate value.
We'll just say it spits out baby sharks.
Yeah, sure.
That's one way to put it, at least. I think I would just say A for Chrome Host Seed Shark. Like, it just asks absolutely nothing of you for your 3 mana.
I like A for the Seed Shark.
That's just incredible. All right. Next is Invasion of Segovia. This is 2 and a blue for a battle with 4 defense. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 blue Kraken creature tokens with trample. The old 1/1 tramplers. And then if you can get the 4 defense down, it becomes Cadus, Sea Tyrant of Segovia, which is a 3/3 legendary serpent that says non-creature spells you cast have convoke. Yeah. And then it says at the beginning of your end step, untap up to 4 target creatures. Becomes a 3/3, I guess.
Yeah, and in the Convoke deck, making 2 1/1s for 3 mana is not a bad deal.
That's true. So you get, I mean, it's weird because there's all this extra text, but it really is just 3 mana, make 2 1/1s with trample. And then if you get it dead, then you get a 3/3 out of the deal as well with some minor upside.
Yeah.
That seems fine. I am not excited about it. I like that it makes 2 1/1s that could potentially help you get this thing transformed with like a tempo play or removal spell the next turn. I like that. So it plays into itself for not that much mana.
Yeah.
But the overall upside on both sides isn't really that high.
Yeah, it's not that high. I mean,
but I don't want to knock it too bad, you know.
The Sea Tyrant works in the Convoke deck by like, you have all these creatures out, all your spells of Convoke, untap all your creatures. This is more of like a build around B. Like, I think I'd want to be doing something with all these rather than assume that this is just good in any deck.
Right. I mean, it seems fine in any deck. right? Like
The
it's
joke,
not like,
by the way, if you don't know, Segovia is a plane where everything is extremely small. So it's like a tiny plane.
I did not
So
know that.
that's why there's 1/1 trample krakens that are like the equivalently 10/10s, and Segovian Angel in Modern Horizons is a 1/1 flying vigilance, but like in Segovia she's normal size, but it's this like tiny plane.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. Okay, that's pretty cool. I actually want to give it a higher grade for that. I will restrain myself, but I'm glad you said that. So I mean, this seems to me like a C, like, or a C plus in most decks.
Yeah, I think it's a build around B. I think in your Convoke deck where you're getting a lot of value out of both halves of the card, then I'd be pretty happy with the card. I think in most decks it's not going to be great.
Next is C double. This is 2 blue for an instant at rare. It says this spell can't be copied. Choose one. That's a weird sentence. Choose one. If an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you may choose both. Copy target spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. The other one is create a token that's a copy of target creature. Oh, no. No.
Well,
I have to add 4 mana?
No.
What am I missing here?
It's 4 mana to make a token that's a copy of target creature. So it's a 4 mana instant speed clone.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I got you now.
So
I thought it was copying a creature on the stack for some reason. I get you. Okay, so that's fine.
No, but you can copy target spell. So you could copy a creature on the stack.
Oh, okay, right. So you could, but the much more relevant use for us is that second ability.
But I think they're both actually pretty relevant. Like if they play a good ETB creature or Phyrexian Gargantua, you can. I mean, I guess either way you can copy it with the second part. But
I can steal their spells. I see.
Well, it's not steal because you copy it, so you get it and they get it.
Not steal.
I think they're both pretty relevant.
Yeah, definitely. This card seems sweet.
And if you get to 8 or more, then you can leave cards in their graveyard. You can leave mana up and then go C double, copy your spell, also copy a creature, and get a really sick 2-for-1. I mean, for 2 blue, make a copy of a creature and play at instant speed.
Yeah,
that's like a B+ level card. I think this card's close to like an A-.
Yeah, I'm going to stay at B+, but I'm with you. That this is very powerful. Instant speed creatures, especially, can trade off in combat or change the game a lot just on its own. Yeah, I like C double. You want to go A-?
I'll go A-, especially in a deck that can get them to 8 cards sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Transcendent Message is next. It's X, blue. This is an instant. It says draw X cards, but it has Convoke.
So let's say to draw 3 cards, you have to spend 7 mana, tap 5 lands and 2 creatures, or 4 lands and 3 creatures, and that's to draw 3 cards, which isn't even like going to win the game. I'm just going to say F on Transcendent Message.
I think it's an F.
Just don't go here.
Don't go there. And trust us, we would like to go there, but no. Next is Zephyr Singer. This is 2 blue for a 3/4 Siren Pirate at rare. It's got Convoke. It has flying and vigilance. And when it enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on each creature that convoked it.
Fantastic.
Jeez.
I mean, you convoke this with 2 creatures. They don't get to attack this turn. It's actually a pretty elegant design in that sense. You don't get to just ambush them with flyers. Mm-hmm. But you convoke this with a 2/2 and a 3/3. All of a sudden, you have 3 flying creatures on the board, one of which is a 3/4 flyer with vigilance. So,
and this one's not tapped, so you can actually stay alive. Yeah, this just seems awesome.
I like an A for Zephyr Singer. I mean,
I do too.
How unhappy are you to cast this for 4 mana? Pretty happy.
It's actually fine. Yeah, and if you convoke it with just 1 creature, that could be very strong.
Yeah.
Next is Invasion of Arcavios, which is 3 blue for 7 defense battle. Okay, this better be good. When it enters the battlefield, search your library, graveyard, and or outside the game. So that's your sideboard in our case, for an instant or sorcery card you own. Reveal it, put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, you shuffle. And if you do ever get this thing transformed, which I can't imagine you could, it becomes Invocation of the Founders, which is an enchantment that says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, you may copy the spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Nope.
Yeah,
I don't like anything about this.
I don't think this is for limited. I would give Invasion of Arcavios an F.
I would too. Next is Jin-Gitaxias, our last Praetor. It's 3 blue for a 5/5 legendary Phyrexian Praetor at Mythic. It's got Ward 2. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, you draw a card. And you can pay 3 and a blue to exile it, return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. And you can activate only as a sorcery and only if you have 7 or more cards in hand. Really? And it becomes the Great Synthesis. Chapter 1. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. You have no maximum hand size for as long as you control the Great Synthesis. And you had to have 7 to flip it, so you draw 7?
Yeah.
Okay. And now you've got 14 cards. Chapter 2, return all non-Phyrexian creatures to their owner's hands. Chapter 3, you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana costs, and then you exile it and return it to the battlefield as Jin-Gitaxias. All right, finally one that we can actually knock on a little bit here, right? I mean, you're still getting a 5-mana 5/5 Ward 2, so it's not like we can give it a bad grade or anything like that. But 7 cards in hand? Come on.
Yeah, 7 cards in hand is a pretty big ask.
Happen. So basically, this one we can just do 5-mana 5/5 Ward 2 with the extra ability of whenever you cast a non-creature spell with converted, mana value 3 or greater, you draw a card. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if you play this on turn 5, you probably can't kill it. It's a 5/5. It has Ward 2, and then next turn you just cast a random spell and draw a card. That's pretty good. This is like a B, though.
It's like
the
a
rest
B.
The rest of them are flat A's. Jin-Gitaxias is a B.
Yeah, I feel bad for Jin. Last blue card is Complete the Circuit. This is 5 and a blue for an instant at Rare. It has Convoke, and it says you may cast sorcery spells this turn as though they had Flash. And when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell twice. You may choose new targets for the copies. I'm just like never. I mean, I might do this on stream. It does copy. It might say
you're actually getting paid for this. Like, I'm not saying this card's good, but you are getting paid.
You are. What? I mean, is it just a removal spell? Like that you're trying to triple up on here or whatever?
I mean, if you could triple up on the like incubate equal to the number of lands you control, that could be pretty good.
But I'm paying a 6-mana instant, yes, with Convoke, but generally it's difficult to get these things down to like 1 or 0 mana.
Look,
you're still
I think this card's
4.
enough. I'm not saying you should complete the circuit, but in your like turbo Convoke deck, because remember Convoke is red-blue primarily. In your Convoke deck, where you have all these tokens, and you can play this for like 3 mana and tap 3 creatures, and then spend 3 mana to play a spell and get 3 copies, you are getting 3 total spells out of the deal. Like, imagine if you had how many 1 mana, decent spells would you need before this became something you were interested in?
Like 3 or 4 or something.
So like
not 2.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at like some of the cheap spells. I mean, there's like this spell costs 2 less if it targets an attacking creature, but are they really going to have 3 attacking creatures? Yeah, I mean,
ludicrous.
There's red burn spells that could maybe get you there, but yes, okay, this is a bit tough. I will say that.
A bit tough. I'm going to give it an F, and I would not recommend.
I'm okay with an F. I'm okay with an F. I wasn't fighting against it.
All right, let's move on to our gold cards. This is where they really unleash the fury usually. So let's see if they do here. Our first one up is called Invasion of New Phyrexia, and it is a mythic rare battle with 6 defense, and it is blue, white, X to cast it. When it enters a battlefield, you create X 2/2 white and blue knight creature tokens with vigilance. So that's excellent. Right.
Oh, yeah. Very, very good.
Think like 5 mana, right? You get 3/2/2 vigilance. And also, those are creatures that you can use, of course, to help transform this into Teferi Akosa. Oh, I didn't know he had a last name, of Zhalfir. This is a Planeswalker, legendary Planeswalker Teferi at 4 loyalty. 3 abilities, +1. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard a creature card. -2, you get an emblem with knights you control, get +1/+0, and have Ward 1. And -3, which notably you can do right away. Tap X creatures you control. When you do, shuffle target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value X or less into its owner's library. So you get a decent planeswalker. Like that isn't, this isn't the type of planeswalker that you're like, oh, the game's just over. But
it's pretty good, though.
Very good. Yeah.
I would say that blue-white
like
X makes X 2/2 knights with a vigilance is like an A-.
Yeah, I think so too.
Because look, 4 mana for 2, fine deal. That's the buyout, right? That's where you're like, if I'm in dire straits, I cast this turn 4. I have, let's say, a slow hand with 2/5 drops. Turn 4, I'm making 2 knights.
Right.
Great. A lot of stats. 4/4 with the stats for 4 mana. And then the more you can slow roll this to just cast it for 8 mana and make 6 tokens, the better. And all of a sudden, you're really talking.
You are. And then you also have that easier math where you can, because again, what part of the big cost of trying to flip over these battles is leaving your defenses down for a turn. And since these have vigilance, you can say, well, would I be okay with losing 2 of these knights to get to Fairy? And it's like, probably. You go attack all of them at my battle. And then they go, okay, block these 2, and then the rest get through, and boom.
Also, they have vigilance. So you're not overextending that much.
That's what I was saying. Yeah. You take away that defensive liability part of the equation.
Yeah. And then I think a lot of the times you're actually just going to immediately -2 to make all your knights into 3/2s with a board 1.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking it's like slightly first.
Noted. I like A for Invasion of New Phyrexia.
Yeah. I think it's a pretty easy A.
What does Errant and Giada do?
1 blue-white for a 2/3 legendary human angel at rare. Flash and flying. You can look at the top card of your library anytime, and you can cast spells with flash or flying from the top of your library. So I would give a B to a 3 mana 2/3 flash flyer, because that's actually, we're talking actual ambushing at that point.
That is 2 for 1 territory, right?
And then getting the ability to just cast, some free flyers. Mostly, there's not that many flash cards in general. I would say it's probably a B+, and in the right deck, it's closer to an A-. Like if you can flash this out end of turn, and remember to look, if you flash it end of turn, look at your upkeep. You might have a flash creature there.
Oh yeah.
And then get there. You can get some pretty good stuff out of that.
Yeah, I like that. B+ for Errant and Giada. Here's our preview card: Hitotsugu and Kairi. This is 2 blue black for a 5/4 flying legendary creature, ogre, demon, dragon at rare. When it enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order, aka Brainstorm. And then this is a crazy part. When it dies, exile the top card of your library. Target opponent loses life equal to its mana value. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. You can play some serious mind games with that.
Right. So when you cast this, your opponent's going to assume that the top card of your deck after you resolve the Brainstorm ability, the first one, is going to be an instant or sorcery. So they're like, okay, I'm not going to kill it right away. But if you think they think that, then you can put it second. You draw your card, attack, and then they kill it. Then all of a sudden it goes nuts there. And, so on and so forth. Obviously, you only have the choice between those top 2. But
it's from your whole hand and the 3 cards that you got. So you may just have 2 of them.
Either way, you get 5 mana for a 5/4 flying that better than draws a card, but still effectively draws you 1 card.
Right.
You're +1. And when it dies, they take some damage, and maybe you get to cast a free spell. Like maybe you get free mana and another card. I mean, this is an A. Like, this card's fantastic.
Absolutely. So A for Hitotsugu and Kairi. Next is Rankle and Torbrand. This is 1 black, red. So 5 mana for a 3/4 legendary fairy dwarf. What happened there?
This sounds like Torbrand. Rankle, Master of Pranks.
Torbrand. That Torbrand.
Torbrand, the stupid dork. Yeah.
Gotcha. It's those 2. Okay. And they combine for a 3/4 flying first strike haste. And whenever Rankle and Torbrand deals combat damage to a player or battle, choose any number. You can have each player create a treasure token, each player sacrifice a creature, and or if a source would deal damage to a player or battle this turn, it deals that much damage +2 instead. I don't get that part.
It basically makes it so if you're about to play this and then attack a battle, you'll get extra damage on that battle.
But it says whenever this deals combat damage to a player, that's when you choose it. player or battle. So how do you?
Well, it's first strike.
First strike.
So
your other creatures are attacking.
Right. Your other creature attacking the battle.
This attacks them. Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about the mana cost, right? Because this is probably the biggest sticking point. All the text is great. And I would definitely pay 5 mana for this card, but is it 5 mana? 1 black, red, red.
I think in a black-red deck, let's say you're 9/8 in black-red deck, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or let's say you're 8. Let's say you're 9/9 because you have 1 Bloodfell Caves, 8 Swamps, 8 Mountains. On 5 mana, are you going to cast this card most of the time? When you have 5 lands in play, you're more likely to cast it than not cast it. But you're not always going to cast it. And sometimes you're really going to get screwed and you're going to draw 4 Swamps. But obviously that's going to be pretty bad for you no matter what. I would say that the mana cost is not nothing, but it's not crazy bad. Double is double is not impact. It's a lot easier than triple, I think.
But we have to ding it a little bit for it, right?
Do you want to give it an A-?
Yeah, I do.
All right. I'm fine with A-. The other thing is making a treasure token's not that good because they get basically first crack at it.
Right.
Each player stacks a creature can be really good depending on what you've set up, but is not the easiest. And then the whole battle thing seems quite unlikely to really pan out.
Yeah. So it's more about player, but yeah, A- for Rankle and Torbran, an unlikely duo. Next is Kogla and Yidaro. All right, now I can see these two hanging out. This is 2 green, red for a 7/7 legendary ape dinosaur turtle. This has gone off the rails at Rare. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1. It gains trample and haste until end of turn, or it fights target creature you don't control. Wow.
Couldn't possibly be a fair fight. Kogla and Yidaro are just
it's like dinosaurs. Right. And this is like, what's it called, right? This is like, I can't remember if they did this, but is this
Godzilla
like
and King
Kong and Godzilla fighting together?
I'm sure they teamed up at some point. I'm not a King Kong lore master, to be honest.
Me neither, and then this also has another. So by the way, those are 2 fantastic abilities, right? One of them fighting, kills basically anything, and the other one just says, okay, I get to slam right away if it's going to win me the game. But it also has 2 green, red, discard Kogla and Yidaro. What does that mean?
So from your hand, you can pay 4 mana and discard it.
Okay. And then
destroy an artifact or enchantment, and then shuffle this into your deck and draw a card.
Destroy up to 1 target artifact. So you can just do this.
If you're stuck on mana, you can pay 4, put this back in your deck and draw a card. That's the Yidaro ability. Remember, it jumps out of your deck if you cycled it a bunch of times.
Right.
I mean, this card's an A+. Wait, it's a 6 mana 7/7 that fights one of their creatures.
Or kills them.
Or attacks them for 7.
Right. In the situations where that's lethal, you just do that.
Just not a believable card.
That's just an unbelievable card. And that's a regular rare. Again, the only caveat is that it is double red, double green. So you got to, factor that in a little bit. But as Luis described, that's not like a deal breaker. It's just a little harder.
A+ for Kogla and Yidaro. We've got Galta and Mavrin. So this is Galta, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and then Mavrin, the vampire.
Okay.
It's 3 green, white for a 12/12 legendary creature, dinosaur vampire. 7 mana, 12/12 trample. Whenever you attack, and this is, by the way, whenever you attack. So you can cast this and attack with something and choose to do that right away.
Okay.
Whenever you attack, choose 1. Create a tapped and attacking XX green dinosaur token with trample, where X is the greatest power among other attacking creatures. So it doesn't count itself for that. Mm-hmm. Or create X1 white vampire tokens with lifelink, where X is the number of other attacking creatures.
These designs are really cool.
Yeah, they're really funny. So
I can see little Mavrin up on his
obviously
forehead.
just 7 mana for a 12/12 trample is obviously just like so big that it could have been a 10/10 or 8/8 or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the stats do matter sometimes. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, you play this, immediately attack and make like a 3/3 dinosaur, or if you attack with multiple creatures, maybe 2 or 3 1/1 lifelinks. Like the 2 or 3 1/1 lifelinks really excite me because you get to play this and attack with 3 creatures and gain 3 life just right off the bat.
Well, are they attacking or no?
Oh, wow. Weird. So
They just sit back. Yeah.
the dinosaur creature token attacks.
Yes.
The vampires do not.
No. So it's kind of like a defense offense thing. It's like, well,
okay. Well,
yeah.
that's all.
Which
in
is
some ways, that's almost
arguably better. Yeah.
Because now you get to make the vampires if you're going to die, or if you have a lot of attackers, and make the dinosaur if it's attacking weird. Okay.
Exactly.
I would probably give this an A, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the 7 mana is a little tougher, right? So it might be trending towards
Certainly.
A-, but come on, 12/12 with trample. Like, just that is going to end the game if it doesn't get killed. And this does a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I would just go A on Galta and Mavrin.
I would too.
I just think you can cast it. You're just going to win, especially because it does matter the turn that you cast it. You get the ability. Drana and Linvala. This is 1 white, black for a legendary vampire angel. It's a 3/4 at regular rare. It has flying and vigilance. So 4 mana, 3/4 flying vigilance, already pretty good. Activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated. Wow. And that doesn't mention anything about mana abilities, right? So it just shuts them all down.
Oh yeah, just like
OG
Linvala.
Linvala, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Drana and Linvala has all activated abilities of all creatures your opponents control. You may spend mana as though they were mana abilities of any color to activate those abilities. That gets weird.
Yeah, that's bizarre. So it turns off all their abilities and steals them.
Yes. And you get a 4 mana, 3/4 flying vigilance just as your base. It seems really solid. I mean, I would probably go like more B+ range for Drana and Linvala.
I think B+, because it's also the mana cost on Galta and Mavrin, the double green, double white, doesn't matter that much because by the time you hit 7 in a green-white deck, probably cast it. Drana and Linvala costing white, black, and 1, so 4 mana. This on turn 4 will sometimes miss.
Yes.
And that is a little bit more of a risk. So
yeah.
I like B+ on Drana and Linvala.
Yeah. Next is Invasion of Tolvada, which is 3 black-white for a 5 defense battle. It says when it enters the battlefield, return target non-battle permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, so you regrow some non-battle card. If you can get it transformed, it becomes the Broken Sky, which is an enchantment that says creature tokens you control get +1/+0 and have lifelink. And it says at the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. And of course, basically you get a 2/1 flying lifelink. Boy, flipping this thing really pays you off, but it does seem difficult to do. I think I would be down to try this.
Immediately getting a 2/1 flying lifelink means you're really not going to die if you flip this. The turn you flip this.
Totally. And you need to be able to get back a non-battle permanent card. I mean, basically it says you get back a creature for 5 mana.
Yeah, 5 mana for a Zombify with significant upside. Like this is one of those battles where if you flip it, you win the game.
Yes. And it pays you off the way you want to be paid off. It gives you that lifelinker on your end step, right? At the beginning of your end step. So you flip this battle, you get the lifelinker, it can block, it means that you probably won't die, and then you have this inevitability. I actually like this a lot because Zombifies need a little bit of a bump, and this one has a lot more than a little bit of a bump.
So do you like this like A- level or B+ level?
I like it at B+ level. It's still conditional, right? It doesn't just do everything itself, but the upside is you win the game. So I like B+ for Invasion of Tolvada. I would play it in every deck that I thought could cast it.
Yeah, I like B+ for that.
All right. Baral and Kari Zev is next. This is 1 blue-red for a 2/4 legendary human. Hey, they're both humans. At rare, it has First Strike and Menace. And it says whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you may cast a spell with lesser mana value that shares a card type with it from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, create First Mate Ragavan, a legendary 2/1 red monkey pirate creature token that gains haste until end of turn.
And doesn't go away.
Yes,
so, it
does
is legendary, but it doesn't disappear end of turn. So you're not going to use this to make a free spell that often. That's, I guess, the Kari Zev's expertise kind of joke.
Yeah, very difficult to set that up.
But 3 mana, 2/4 First Strike Menace is already quite the brawler. And then the first time you play an instant sorcery, you get a little Ragavan. That sounds pretty good to me.
I like that. And it asks almost nothing of you. Also, adding first strike to this card really does change it, right? Because a 2/4 menace can be double blocked pretty effectively, but a 2/4 first strike menace can't. Like,
no, it's quite difficult.
Anything with 2 toughness that's in the equation just gets zapped, and then the 4 toughness should be able to soak up the rest. So really solid card here. Also, just the fact that you literally get a token that's called First Mate Ragavan, a legendary 2/1 red monkey pirate creature token, is like unreal. I like B+ again for Baral and Carry Zev.
Yeah, I would actually probably go almost to A-. Like,
Could see
if your opponent plays this on turn 3, it's going to dominate the board for a while, and then they're going to get a free 2/1. And if the 2/1 ever trades off, you then get to make another 2/1.
Try to do it again.
And sometime you might even double spell. It's not unrealistic to think that could happen.
Yeah, and if you're being aggressive as well, the 2/1 haste, the haste aspect comes in. Yeah, B+ A- for Baral and Carry Zev seems really good. Next is Glissa, Herald of Predation. Oh, Glissa's all by herself. This is 3 black green for a 3/5 legendary Phyrexian zombie elf at rare. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose 1, incubate 2 twice, or transform all incubator tokens you control, or Phyrexians you control gain first strike and death touch until end of turn.
Wow, it's like they've laid it out in order. You're like, play this, incubate 2 twice. Next turn, transform all my incubators. Next turn, first strike and death touch.
Love it. It's like, did you wonder how to use this card? Here's your recipe.
Look, it's in this order. You just got to do it.
Instruction book included.
Another A, you spend 5 mana, you get a 3/5, and you immediately incubate 2 twice. They kill Glissa, and you're okay with it.
It's fine.
Or if you have an attack setup, you're just like, play this, all my Phyrexians get first strike and death touch, attack you with 3 Phyrexians or whatever.
Totally. It's got 5 toughness, so even if they have instant speed removal, it also has to be removal that can kill a burly creature. I think I just like A for Glissa, Herald of Predation.
Yeah.
Too much action. All right. What about Yargle and Multani? What did they come up with together?
So this is 3 black, green for a frog spirit elemental. It's a legendary creature. And it's an 18/6. And that's what it is. It's an 18/6.
It just has a bunch of flavor text.
Yep.
Okay, so this is an interesting question, right? Like, how much mana are we willing to pay for an 18/6?
I mean, look, how much better is this than a Colossal Dreadmaw 6/6 trample? Well, it's quite a bit better.
I think it might be worse.
No, it's better. 18/6 is just so much bigger. Like, they can't double block it with 2 4/4s, whereas a Colossal Dreadmaw gets double blocked.
True. I just always think of, like, they can't chump.
True. But, if you can give this flying or trample with some ability, that could obviously be really good. Well, there's the backup red creature that lets you sack it to deal 19. Just deal straight 20, actually, to your opponent.
Yeah,
at that point.
There's your dream. Lifelink on it, trample. Okay, so it's a little better than a Dreadmaw. This one's a little harder to cast at 3 black, green.
I mean, I think this is like a C. Like,
I feel like it's
maybe
like
C minus.
D, maybe?
It's not great.
Yeah. C minus for Yargle and Multani. We'll have to see how it plays out. Next is Jeru and Hazaret. This is 2 red, white for a 5/4 legendary human god at rare. As long as you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, it gets vigilance and haste. And whenever it attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may exile a legendary creature card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Until end of turn, you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. Dang. There's a lot of legends here at the rare slot. It doesn't seem super pushed to be a legend set, but I mean, every card we've read out of these golds has all been legends, right? It's outside of the battles. Yeah. So maybe it hits more often than you'd think. And obviously you don't need to sweeten the pot too much on a 2 red, white 5/4 potential vigilance haste.
Yeah, I mean, it could easily have vigilance and haste the turn you passed if you curve into it and just boom.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need, like, it looks at 6 cards, so you don't need that many more cards or legends to hit maybe once a game or something like that, because it's probably going to get 2 attacks in.
Would you play this without any legends in your deck is the first question. The answer is sure, right?
Yeah, if you have an aggressive deck, you would.
Yeah.
Because you would just play this as your like second to last card or last card and just, attack with it immediately.
Yeah. And it's okay at that. I would give it like a C+ or a B-. Yeah. And then occasionally you might hit something else. I think I would go C+ for Jeru and Hazoret. And then if you do have 1 or 2 legendary creatures, it gets up into the B range where you might be able to hit. I mean, you get to play them without paying their mana cost. Like, it is an insane hit if you hit.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, C+ up into B if you can build
if you've got a couple legends, yeah.
Yeah. Next is Quintorius Lore Master. Boy, Quintorius missed so hard last time. I hope that they beefed him here. This is
he's got the spark or whatever here.
Oh, he is. He's on fire. This is 3 red white for a 3/5 legendary elephant cleric at rare with vigilance. I like the 3/5 for a elephant, by the way. That's the classic. Yeah. At the beginning of your end step, exile target non-creature, non-land card from your graveyard, and you get a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. All right, so they made it easier. And then you can pay 1 white, red, and tap it, plus sacrifice a spirit to choose target card exiled with Quintorius. You may cast that card, the spell, without paying its mana cost. If that spell would be put into a graveyard, put it on the bottom of its owner's library instead.
Pretty neat.
That's really cool. So you get the 3/2, you can turn it into the thing that you exiled.
Yeah, so you get the 3/2. You pay 5 mana, I think, to play this. Immediately on your end step, you exile something, get a 3/2, and then next turn, you can sack the 3/2 to play that card for free if it was a good card.
And the only real catch to all of this is that the card needs to be a non-creature, non-land card that you're exiling. So artifacts, enchantments, instant sorceries, planeswalkers, battles. But creatures and lands are your most common permanents in your limited deck, so it is it does cramp your style a little bit. But I mean, even if you just use like some random combat trick and you get to exile it and turn it into a 3/2, you're already pretty happy.
Yeah. So
I like B+ for Quintorius Lore Master. Like, you're getting a good amount of power and toughness. You're getting the ability to just for no extra mana start making 3/2s, and then I don't know about the activated ability as much, but who cares?
Yeah, I mean, this takes a little work. You're not going to have spells in your graveyard unless you build your deck such that by turn 5 you'll have 1 or 2 spells in your graveyard. Mm-hmm. But once you get to that point, then I think you'll be pretty happy. So I think Quintorius is like a B+.
Yeah, that's what I think too. What does Inga Inisika do?
It's 2 green-blue for a 4/4 legendary creature, human god at rare. Creatures you control have vigilance and tap at 1 mana of any color, but spend this mana only to cast creatures. Whenever you cast a creature spell, if 3 or more mana from creatures was spent to cast it, draw a card. Kind of funny in the Convoke set, because it kind of gives your creatures this like weird Convoke-ish ability.
Yeah, that's interesting. 4 mana, 4/4 at the base.
Yeah. And it does make it so all your creatures can now cast your other creatures, and then if you start going nuts with this, then you end up in a spot where you get to draw a card whenever you cast a creature as well.
How much value do you put on just getting vigilance to your other creatures?
Not a lot, but it does mean you can like attack and then develop your board.
Right.
So that's not terrible.
It feels like there's enough here to get Inga Inisika up to a B, but it's close. Like, I would be leaning towards B-.
I would probably lean towards B+. In a really creature heavy deck, this card I think is quite strong.
That is true. You could just dump your whole hand the next turn.
It's a bit of a build around. Like, it's not not exactly a build around, but I think it's a bit of a build around.
Okay. So B trending towards B+ for Inga Inisika in their chariot. Next is Cruxa and Kunoros, which is 3 red, white, black. So we have I think is there a full cycle here? A little confused, but whatever. There's some of these are triple colored cards, and this is one of them. And so this one is a legendary elder giant dog. And it is a mythic rare. It's a 6/6 Vigilance Menace lifelink. That's insane. And it says, whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you may exile 5 cards from your graveyard. When you do, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you have to exile 5 cards, and then if there's a creature card left over, you can get it back.
Which doesn't make sense to me because Kunuro stopped creatures from coming back. So that was like a little weird. But I mean, who knows? So 6 mana, 6/6 Vigilance Menace lifelink. Sure. I'm just in for that. It's 3-color card. It's not the easiest to cast, but still in. And then in the late game, this starts bringing creatures back. Yeah. I mean, this is an A-. Just respect the mana cost. I mean, there's all these lands. I don't anticipate it'll be that hard.
I think
to splash
so too.
This thing.
Respect the mana cost, but you're getting 6/6 lifelink. That's really key. Next is Borborygmos and Fibblethip. Man, the meetings for these cards must have just been nonsense. Borborygmos and Fibblethip, it costs 2 green, blue, red for a 6/5 legendary Cyclops homunculus at Mythic. And when it enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. Then you may discard any number of land cards. When you discard 1 or more cards this way, this card deals twice that much damage to target creature. It also has the activated ability, 1 and a blue, put Borborygmos and Fibblethip into its owner's library, 3rd from the top. So it can still run away and hide. So first off, it's 5 mana for a 6/5 that when you attack, draws you a card.
Or enters the battlefield.
Draws you a card.
Yeah, and you don't have to discard. You can just straight up.
Right. I was ending the sentence there to show that. Like, that's great. Right.
And then you can discard as many lands as you want to deal 2 damage per land to a creature.
Do 1 for a shock, do another for 4 damage to a creature.
Yeah.
And then if you really need to, you can tuck it in your library 3rd from the top, which is kind of a long way off, but then you draw it, it ETBs, you get to draw the card again. I mean, it's weird, but like what's not to like here, right?
No, it's a good card.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
It protects you from flood by, if you have this card in your deck, really try to hold lands if you can, because you'll want to play this and immediately nug something. Just turning your lands into shocks is really nice. Definitely. But also it's just splashable, worth splashing because you just play this and you draw a card immediately. And then if they don't kill it, you attack and draw a card. And if you have enough mana, like late in the game, you can play this with 2 mana up and then it protects itself. Yeah, I would probably give it this an A-.
I would want to give it an A- too. Yeah. I mean, it's a 2-for-1 the turn you cast it. It's huge and it protects itself and can manage the board if left unchecked or even right away. A- for Borborygmos and Fibblethip. The card's just awesome, really. Thalia and the Gitrog monster. Man, what happened on this plane? This is 1 black, 1 black, white, green.
Well, it's not one plane. It's just all of them, right? The Phyrexians are invading all of them at once. They did the classic battle strategy of having as many fronts as possible.
Yeah, and that's worked out really well.
Every single plane and all these disparate allies are teaming up to battle back at the greatest threat known to not even humanity, just to life as we know it.
Okay, so that's what's happening is that Thalia and the Gitrog monster were like, all right, well, we're going to lose it all. So 1 white, black, green for a 4/4 first strike death touch. It's a legendary human frog horror at Mythic. And I mean, first strike and death touch are just, peanut butter and jelly, man. That's like one of the best 2 combos, 2 keyword combos you can get. It says you may play an additional land on each of your turns, which is okay at the 4 mana slot. You might actually get a land drop out of that, but not great. Creatures and non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tap. So there's Thalia's addition to the party. And whenever Thalia and the Gitrog monster attacks, sacrifice a creature or land, then draw a card.
Not optional, by the way.
Right.
I mean, if this didn't cost 3 different colors, it would be an easy A.
Yes.
I still think it's an A because you play this unkillable in combat. I guess if they block with 5 4/4s, they can kill it. It lets you play extra lands, which works nicely with the last ability because you're sacking your lands and drawing cards, so you get to keep hitting land drops. And then it makes all your opponent's creatures enter the battlefield tapped. That's pretty substantial abilities. So I'd give an A to Thalion the Gitrog monster. Its abilities are keyed a little more towards the early part of the game. So try to have good mana so you can cast it, but it's just a fantastic card if you can.
Yeah, I agree. It does the thing. I mean, the only irony to it is that it's not like the creatures could have interacted with it in combat anyway. So the fact that they're tapped probably doesn't really matter. Zurgo and Ojutai is next. This is 2 blue, red, white for a 4/4 legendary orc dragon at Mythic with flying and haste. So we got a 5 mana 4/4 flying haste that has hexproof as long as it entered the battlefield this turn. And there's no window there, right?
No, it just has it.
Just has it. Whenever one or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player or battle, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. You may return one of those dragons to its owner's hand.
So
I don't get it.
You play this. It has haste and hexproof. You hit them.
Yes.
You get to impulse.
Yes.
And then if you want, you can return this to your hand.
You may return one of those dragons that attacked. That
technically
hit.
this also keys off other dragons hitting, but that's not super relevant for our purposes. The reason to do this is you keep it permanent hexproof.
It's hexproofed up.
Look, when you play this on turn 5, you're not bouncing it. That's just not going to be a play you're going to make. When you play this on turn 10 and both players are not doing anything, yeah, you probably want to do that because there's no window for them to use a removal spell on it then.
It comes at a cost of 5 mana a turn, but if your opponent isn't attacking you and doesn't have the ability to mess with it, then you would do that.
Yeah, so, I mean, 5 mana, 4/4 flying, haste, hexproof, and then draw a card when it hits them or hits one of the battles. Yeah, that's great. That's probably an A- for Zurgo and Ojutai.
That's what I think too. And it is also a battle flipper. Very nice. Next is Zimone and Dina. This is, my favorite color trio. This is black, green, blue for a 3/4 legendary human dryad at Mythic. Whenever you draw, so 3 mana, 3/4, nice. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And you can tap it and sacrifice another creature to draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you control 8 or more lands, repeat this process once. The process being drawing another card.
And then putting a land into play.
Okay.
And then once you activate this ability, of course, you're draining your opponent for 2, assuming you do it on your turn.
Right, because that would be your second card.
If you have 7 lands in play, on their turn, you can activate this, put a land into play, draw another card, and it'll trigger then too if you wanted to chump first. I really like this card. It takes a little bit of build around work because it's 3 colors and you want to sack other creatures. But splashing this in a deck that has a bunch of good creatures like a green-black deck or something sounds great to me because the ability is really good. Cashing in a creature for a card and 2 life and then eventually 2 cards because once you get up to 8 lands, it's perfect. So I would give Zimone and Dina a B+.
Okay, I like that too. The mana cost being, again, the most difficult thing. 3 colors and early is tough. Next is Invasion of Ayara, and if you thought that was a tough mana cost, this one's Wooburg. Costs white, blue, black, red, green, straight up. It is a battle. It has 7 defense. It says when it enters a battlefield, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile 2 non-land cards with mana value 4 or less. You may cast one of those 2 cards without paying its mana cost. Put one of them in your hand. Then put the other cards exiled this way on the bottom of your library in a random order. I'll just read it. So if you can transform it, it's Awaken the Maelstrom. It's a sorcery. It's all colors. Target player draws 2 cards. You may put an artifact card from your hand onto the battlefield. Create a token that's a copy of a permanent you control. Distribute 3+1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 creatures you control. Destroy target permanent opponent controls. I mean, this is all fun and games and stuff, but I mean, come on, right? We're just not casting Invasion.
Right? Normally, yes, but there are all those tap lands.
Mm-hmm.
I could see decks playing this because it does double cascade. Okay. It basically cascades 2, but you get to play 1 for free and put the other in your hand. And then once you flip this, 7 defense is a lot. You get this blow up their best thing. You draw 2 cards. You copy your best thing, whatever. This is a build around A. In a 5-color deck, this is very much worth building towards. Not every deck's going to play it.
And we have seen that in decks in formats that have good fixing.
Yeah. So I like build around A for Invasion of Alara. We have another 5-color card here, ish. It's Omnath, Locus of All. He keeps adding colors. So he's blue, white, red, green, plus Phyrexian black. So one of each color, Wooburg, except the black you can pay with 2 life, so you don't have to be all 5. Legendary creature, Refraction Elemental, 4/4. If you lose unspent mana, that mana becomes black instead. So your mana just starts building up, though if Omnath dies, that mana goes away because he has to be in play for that to happen. And then at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card if it has 3 or more colored mana symbols in its mana cost. If you do, add 3 mana in any combination of its colors and put it in your hand. If you don't reveal it, put it in your hand. So basically, this draws you a card every turn. And if you run into a spell that has 3 total mana, colored mana symbols, whether they're the same or different, you can reveal it to add 3 mana, but you're probably not going to do that very much. But mostly it's a 5-color 4/4 that draws a card every turn. Really a 4-color because you can always pay the 2 life. This one I like a lot less because you're putting in a bunch of work and you're getting a 4/4 that draws you a card every turn.
Right, which is good, but man, you're just not going to have like the invasion.
If this cost
is
5
like
colorless, it'd be close to an A. But it doesn't. It costs very very different mana costs. So I would give Omnath a build around C. If the mana works, you can play it and it's going to be good. It's not worth stretching like if you're a blue-white deck trying to stretch red or green mana into your deck to cast this. No, not so much.
All right, that brings us. Go ahead.
I was going to say Realm Breaker, the invasion tree is next. This is an artifact. It's a legendary artifact at Rare. 2 tap, target opponent mills 3 cards. Put a land card from their graveyard onto the battlefield tapped under your control. It gains, if this land would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. And then 10 tap, sacrifice Realm Breaker. Search your library for any number of Praetor cards and put them on the battlefield and shuffle.
It also costs 3 to cast it.
Yeah. I'm not interested in this card. It's just this is an F. It's just too much nonsense.
Can we use it to mill them out?
If you're a mill deck, yes, it does mill them 3 a turn, but I don't think that's historically a very good strategy.
How about Sword of Once and Future?
So this is, I think, the last one of the sword cycle. It's 3 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has +2/+2 and pro blue and pro black. When a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, surveil 2. Then you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost, and then you exile it if you do that. And it has equipped 2.
And it's a mythic.
3 mana, equip 2, give a creature +2/+2, pro blue and black. And then when it hits them, you get to surveil 2 and maybe play a spell for free out of your graveyard. Obviously, that combos. You can choose to surveil a spell into your graveyard and play it right away. These swords are all pretty good, and this one I think is no exception. Like you run into a deck with these colors, even one of the 2 colors, you're pretty happy, and every time you hit them, you get a pretty decent advantage. So I would give an A- to Sword and Once in Future.
I would too. Just +2/+2 already transforms any of your creatures into a threat, and the extra bonus is nice. They've done a much better job of balancing these. You know, the initial swords were just like ludicrously busted. These are just merely awesome. Our last colorless card is Invasion of Ravnica, which is 5 mana for a battle with 4 defense. And it says when it enters a battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls that isn't exactly 2 colors. What does that mean?
It doesn't exile guild permanents because it's Invasion of Ravnica.
Oh, gotcha.
So it can't exile any of the team ups. Like it can't exile Kogla and Yudaro because they're red in 2 colors.
Also, the wording is just funny because in English, when we say isn't exactly, that
very weird.
It's weird.
But that's the front side. What does the back side do?
So so if you get the 4 defense, it becomes Guild Pact Paragon, which is a 5/5 artifact creature construct. It says whenever you cast a spell that's exactly 2 colors, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a card that's exactly 2 colors from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom. So it searches up guild-based things.
I mean, I would pay 5 mana for a sorcery speed removal that left behind a 5/5 that you took some work to get to, even if you had no exactly 2 color spells. Yeah, I would give this a B.
Too. Yeah, I think so
Invasion
too.
of Ravnica is a B. It's pretty solid. It is annoying that it can't kill a lot of the best cards in the set.
Yeah, a lot of the rare bombs.
It's going to come up,
Yeah, for sure.
They have, Glissa out, and you're just like, Okay.
Yeah, I have my 5 mana removal spell that doesn't actually kill it. Still, I do like it at B. I mean, we're still talking about a good 2-for-1 opportunity. If you can get the thing transformed, it can kind of run away. Okay, so Luis, there's another sheet of Multiverse Legends cards.
Yeah.
And these will appear in the draft packs, similar to how we've seen these extra bonus sheets where there's one slot for them. There's uncommon rare and mythic rare cards that can be in that slot. So you don't know which one you're going to get on any given time. But these are all reprints. So we're going to go over these, but I think we should be pretty brisk with them because these cards have all been printed and focus a little bit more on the, like, how good is this one? Where does this lead you? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. So I think that what we're going to want to do is do like a kind of small bonus episode where we just hammer all these out at once.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so we got the Rare and Mythic review, and certainly before next week, I think probably later this week, we'll get the bonus episode out. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that makes sense to me because these are only one slot, but they do. It's weird because they do affect the draft format. So we do have to go over them, but they're also reprints and only one slot. So they're not quite the same as the
There's some
regular cards.
Interesting cards to talk about for sure, though.
Okay. So we'll
definitely get to those.
We will address those on the next episode of the show, whether that's later this week or early next, but we will do so. So that's going to do it for the Rare and Mythic Rare show here for March of the Machine. Once again, we want to thank all of our supporters on Patreon for supporting the show. It's patreon.com/limited resources. Thank you to everybody over there for keeping us going. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the podcast over at lrcast.com. And that's going to do it. We'll see you next week.
So I have a question for you, Marshall. Mm-hmm. I've been doing these cube money drafts. You know, we've got a Discord where the DGens gather.
I got to catch part of your one last night. I'm going to watch the rest, but these are my wheelhouse, man. I'll watch as many of these as you stream.
3v3s with like highly skilled players. Like last night, it was myself, Alpha Frog, so Gavin Thompson, he was in the MPL. He's queued for the next PT. And then one of his friends, Mac, against Luis Salvato, Eli Cassis, and Sandy Dog. So some legends of the
LSV?
game. The real LSV. And, I ended up going 2-1 with a sick Underworld Breach deck. Got kind of unlucky, I think, to not go 3-0. But my team ended up losing. So I have the question for you. Uh-huh. So far in the last set of drafts I've done, I have gone 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, 1-2, 1-2. So I'm slightly ahead. I'm ahead one match win in terms of win rate, right? Uh-huh. But I have lost 3 of the 5 drafts. I'm slightly down on drafts. So am I winning in the drafts or losing in the drafts? My personal record is positive.
You're winning.
My team record is negative.
You're winning. It's team draft, right? So sometimes you have to take one for the team. You draft a bit of a stinker, but you keep the other guys off of it. You take your lumps, but as a team you win. Yeah, no, you're winning for sure.
But I'm losing in drafts though.
Wait, I thought you were winning in drafts.
No, I've won 2 drafts and lost 3 drafts, but my individual record is positive.
No, then it's the opposite. You're losing. I'm sorry.
Well, see,
I thought you were being carried.
You used to work at AT&T. It was a corporate job.
I did.
You understand metrics and KPIs.
That's what we tracked in my.
Yeah. So let's just say I'm going to choose for this one my KPI being my match wins, which are positive, not my team wins, which are negative. It's tricky, but I think it really just depends on the situation. Now, if these were reversed, maybe I'd be tracking team wins. Who knows? But
how convenient for you.
Just, you know what? It's sometimes tricky to figure out what to track. And my advice to you, whether it's at work or otherwise, try to figure out what your goal is and maybe track towards that goal. Note, this is not actually good advice to tracking things, but it's good advice to making you look good, which in some cases is more important.